She taught me from a young age. She said, you gotta get them before they get you. A rattlesnake's skin's the same color as the leaves, she said, and we all understood her. She led us with love, but she taught us that the fires, well, they were our friends too. The world's an evil place, she said, and we agreed. And I was there. She took her final breath. She pulled me in close and she said, you're the one. She said, they chose you long before they were even in existence. And I understood what she meant. Her touch could save the world, but her kiss burns it to the ground. I love you, Sister Abigail. I've mentioned before that I planned this year's video way in advance, and I had a schedule to adhere to. That schedule lined up with themed months. I would talk about Star Wars in May, and Adult Swim in September, and wrestling in April. Last year I did something similar, where I talked about something wrestling adjacent in April, and then talked about my childhood fears in October, to coincide with Halloween. I love professional wrestling, and have since I was a kid, but when it comes to making videos about it, it's not something the majority of you want to see. However, I have gotten some people reach out to me who want to get into wrestling, asking me where to start, and that's a really great question. I got into it the first time through video games, but after falling out of it for a while, it was YouTube videos and content creators that got me back into the art form. If you have a problem with me calling it an art form, you're not going to like this video. I got the biggest influx of people wanting to get into wrestling after the Super Eye Patch Wolf video on the Bloodline feud, thus proving the effectiveness of telling wrestling stories in the video format. I mean, I've shown so many of my friends wrestling isn't wrestling just because it tells a wrestling story in an unorthodox way, and also it has Josh Peck in it. But I've always wanted to make a video that is simultaneously about the wrestlers I love and a guide on how to get into wrestling. Because wrestling is a lot of things. It could be a love story, a drama, a comedy. And I honestly didn't think I would get the opportunity to talk about wrestling multiple times within this year. But then I went back to my childhood trauma video and remembered I had a section where I talked about how much Kane scared me as a kid. And that's when I realized the thing that always hooked me about wrestling, the subject of the first full storyline that I ever discovered, and I think the best way to bridge the gap of these two videos is wrestling with horror. But I had other plans for this fall. I had a big retrospective lined up for October and another long analysis right after that. I was finishing up recording the previous month's Adult Swim video when I heard the news of the tragic passing of one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, Bray Wyatt, Wyndham Rotunda, at the young age of only 36. Bray Wyatt was the character I latched onto, and Wyndham was the man I felt inspired by. The man that inspired the story you've seen unfold over these Natter Chamber videos, the horror of being trapped in a distorted dollhouse hell with wacky characters of your own creation that torture conversations out of you. It may sound like I'm breaking kayfabe here, but the original video I had planned for October was to feature more lore and continue the ongoing story that was unraveling over the last couple videos, but this is a topic very important to me, so I am here, not as Andrew the character, but as Andrew the person, the man, the wrestling fan, to tell you the legend of Bray Wyatt. No lore and likely no cameos this time around unless anyone else ends up wanting to talk about Bray. That's not to say this video will be completely devoid of jokes and the general enjoyable ultra content. I'm just putting the story I was telling on hold because I dropped everything when I heard the news and I knew I had to tell you the story that enraptured me. Unlike the other videos that are made for both fans and newbies, I will be going about this video as if you, the viewer, has never seen wrestling but always wanted to get into it. I'm assuming that's a decent amount of you. And if I do my job right, maybe, just maybe, I will be able to create a new group of wrestling fans. No pressure. So let's start off with wrestling and horror. You may not know this, but a lot of wrestling characters or gimmicks are just taken from other famous stories. Cody Rhodes has quoted Death of Superman as a huge influence for his American Nightmare character, and his disfigured character was heavily based on Patrick Bateman in American Psycho. Razor Ramon is Scarface, Sting is both Dark Knight and The Crow. American Pie, Mad Max, John Cena only got his rap gimmick because he dressed up as Vanilla Ice for a Halloween episode. And most famously, the paragon of wrestling horror gimmicks was heavily taken from Halloween. and Michael Myers. Even if you aren't a wrestling fan, or even if you were for a very small portion of your life, you may already know about The Undertaker. You may have seen the memes about Teddy Long using The Undertaker as a form of punishment for other wrestlers, or maybe you wanted to play as him in a video game. While The Undertaker is a beloved character by the fans and everyone backstage, in the canon of WWE is a mysterious force that you pray you do not cross paths with. Despite being a good guy wrestler for a good portion of most of his popular runs, when watching the show, he works more like the final boss of WWE. A new young star is just wetting their feet on the show. Maybe they even held a championship or two, but the moment The Undertaker comes their way, they will have to prove themselves by surviving the dead man. When the man comes around. And that worked perfectly with the supernatural gimmick. There have been other spooky gimmicks like the Boogeyman or Papa Shango, but Halloween shenanigans can only take you so far. Sure, The Undertaker was a good wrestler, but the Dead Man name wasn't just a moniker. He was the Dead Man because no matter how many times he was buried or burned or knocked down, he would always come back. He would always get up. Just like the monster in the film Halloween, he was more of an unstoppable force than a mere mortal man. That's where the iconic sit-up came from. Yes, it's clearly taken from Michael Myers, but it's also used in the middle of matches when it seems Taker's opponents have gotten the best of him to show that no matter how good you think you are, you've got a lot more to do to keep this thing down. Also worth noting that one of the most fun modes in any of the wrestling games was the Defeat the Streak mode in 2K14, where you had to face off against a souped-up Undertaker that would constantly shake off your offense and teleport behind you, nothing personnel kid style. He was literally the final boss fight. But when you have a monster of this capacity that is used mostly as a force for others to overcome, you need to keep him away from the top. Because regardless, he was always going to be a main event star and a huge draw. That's partially why he never needed a belt. He would win championships when he was feuding with champions who poked the bear too hard, but it was never his main goal. His goal was destruction. When people talk about the best iteration of The Undertaker, they tend to talk about the cult leader Taker that was popular around the late 90s Attitude Era of Stone Cold and The Rock. But for me, and maybe it's just nostalgia talking because I started watching in the 2010s, but the return of the Dead Man, where he was treated like a spectacle. He didn't need a championship because he was the championship. He was the phenom. But anything was better than that couple years where he became a Texas biker who would just beat people up. Like DDP, who became a stalker and started following his wife around until he beat him up so badly he became a yoga instructor. Yeah. But with every great monster flick comes its sequel along with its contemporaries. Every classic horror film that trailblazes the genre will have another movie later that claims to do everything the classic did, but better and bloodier. Before The Undertaker became the immovable object, he was still tied to spooky storylines. Like when his manager Paul Bearer revealed that The Undertaker killed his whole family in a fire that he caused, and his half-brother he assumed was dead was actually alive and there to seek revenge. Also, the half-brother may be Paul Bearer's son with Undertaker's mom. That's right, Undertaker. I slept with your mother. This brother was a demon, kind of, and due to the fire that nearly took his life, he was left with horrible burns all over his body and also inexplicably had fire-related powers. We don't know that doesn't happen when you're set on fire. What have you ever been set on fire? And their rivalries were legendary. Kane threw Undertaker into a casket, had an Inferno match, which is a match where fire surrounds the ring and you win by throwing your opponent into the ring of fire. They teamed up and became the Brothers of Destruction. Kane gradually took more and more of his clothes off until eventually revealing that he wasn't actually burned at all. Due to the psychological torment from Paul Bearer, he believed he was burned from head to toe, even though he was actually fine.
I feel no pain. What are you doing?
I'm applying warming jelly to your back. Jake, the soup wasn't burning hot. It was freezing cold. You went into shock and we told you your body was covered in third-degree burns.
But this video isn't about Kane or the Boogeyman or even The Undertaker. This video is about
WWF Tough Enough, Thursday night, following SmackDown on MTV.
Alright, I guess this video is about Tough Enough. The 2000s were the first big rise of reality shows. You could put any people in any position, whether that was on an island facing their fears or a big house. And also, your editors will make a story through editing, but you legally don't have to pay them as writers, so you can capitalize on not having to pay writers a fair wage. It's legitimately what happened during the last writer's strike. Also, during the last writer's strike, celebrities would appear on WWE television to get some some form of work. Which is how we got legendary moments like Ken Jeong getting tossed around by John Cena, little Seth Green teaming up with wrestlers, Hugh Jackman costing Dolph Ziggler the United States Championship, and Donald J. Trump. I don't understand why they don't bring this guy back. I've heard he's looking for a job. One of the most popular reality shows of the time, MTV's The Real World, even featured a contestant named Mike Mizanin, who would walk around the house pretending to be a wrestler and imitating The Rock. He even started calling himself The Miz. What a wacky character I mentioned for no reason in particular. The WWE, like they do with any other popular trend, wanted a piece of this action, so they partnered with MTV to create their own reality show titled Tough Enough. The crux of the show was potential WWE tryouts in the form of a bunch of wannabe wrestlers live in a house together and keep getting eliminated until the final man and the final woman win a guaranteed WWE contract and a cash prize. Sort of. And it was awful. Not to say that it wasn't schlocky, trashy reality show fun, because it was. I'm not going to get on my high horse here and complain about reality shows. They aren't meant to be good. They're meant to be consumed quickly and without question. But the show's goal was to craft the next WWE superstar. And while talented wrestlers did end up getting a job through the reality show, they didn't get them because of it. The most successful standout is the Miz guy from The Real World, but it wasn't easy. People absolutely despised him until he crafted this egotistical movie star character as a defense mechanism to build off of their hate. I only bring it up because this was not the last time WWE tried to combine reality show content with developmental shows to breed new stars. Because you may be asking, where do wrestlers come from anyway? They don't just appear out of nowhere knowing all the ins and outs of wrestling. It's not an easy job. Throughout the years, WWE has used different promotions and shows as developmental brands to groom the next era of wrestlers in front of smaller crowds so they can get comfortable working in front of people and hone their characters. Like OVW superstars The Prototype, real name John Cena, whose character was a wrestling robot, I think. OVW eventually got replaced with FCW, and their iteration of ECW turned into the developmental brand for a little while. Watch Wrestling Society X video to hear more about that. But eventually, after all the dust settles in 2010, the WWE would introduce a new hybrid show meant to combine developmental products and reality show cheese in the form of NXT. NXT, an acronym that stands for nothing, would feature 8 rookies, the likes of big British boy Wade Barrett, plucky indie darling Daniel Bryan, and Skip Sheffield, who had already appeared in the season of Tough Enough, further proving that that show did not work. But NXT wasn't much better. The contestants would have wrestling matches from time to time, but most of the episode's runtime was taken up by challenges where the rookies would whack each other with Q-tips, carry a keg around the ring, drink soda. In the end, it was Wade Barrett who won the competition, but the following week on Monday Night Raw would feature all 8 rookies jumping the barricade and ripping apart the ring, the crew, and beloved hero John Cena. Now, you may know John Cena from his hit movies like Fred the First and Fred 2, the Second Fred, or maybe all the children's brands he appeared on. In the late 2000s, early 2010s, he was the good little poster boy of WWE who would tell kids to believe in their dreams and wear brightly colored outfits to the ring to sell even more toys to those kids. Obviously, the kids loved him. The adult fans wanted him to die. Even if you aren't a wrestling fan, you may also know about Hulk Hogan, who was basically the John Cena of the 80s. He would tell children to eat their vitamins and say their prayers, and maybe someday they would be as big as strong as him. Also a lot of steroids. He didn't say that part, though. But this shtick got old by 1996, so Hulk decided to betray all those kids' trust and turn on the fans to help form the NWO. The NWO was an invading force of outsiders sent to take over WCW, biggest competitor at the time. And while they were supposed to be bad guys, this was the era of TV-14. Put the kids to bed. These guys smoked and swore and dressed in all black and were just so damn cool, I'm being told. Something similar happened in the 90s with wrestler Rocky Maivia, who was as baby of a babyface good guy as you could be, and the rapidly maturing audience also wanted him to die. But Rocky took the vitriol of these fans and the chants of "Die, Rocky, die," and threw them back at the same audience that turned on him when he sided with the dark side and became The Rock. 2 examples of wrestlers who hit their height when they dropped the happy good guy shtick and embraced the hate. That's what people wanted from white meat John Cena. There was even a storyline later where former burn victim and Demon Kane attempted to torture John so much to pull that hate out of him, but even the forces of evil couldn't keep John down. So the question was, could anyone ever make John Cena embrace the dark side? And if they could, they would have to be a seriously deranged individual. But while Cena was known for being beloved by the kids and being such a good guy, he would still berate his opponents in almost a bullying-like manner and would what fans of wrestling love to call bury younger talent. It's tradition at this point that whoever the face of the company becomes, for better or for worse, will always be known as not losing enough to young talent. And while that word is overused, take SummerSlam 2010 as a perfect example. These 8 NXT rookies... 7 NXT rookies were the new cool invading force. They had cool shirts and armbands and would work together to take down the legends of WWE because they just did not care about this oppressive system they were thrust into. Instead of Wade Barrett struggling on his own in a pool full of sharks, he abandoned these laughingstocks from NXT Season 1 into tearing down the entire show, which eventually led to SummerSlam 2010, a pay-per-view event where 6 announced WWE superstars would face off against the 7 remaining members of the new opposing force. That 7th spot was not filmed by smarmy movie star douchebag The Miz. It was filled by the rookie he tortured and embarrassed on NXT, Daniel Bryan, former member of the Nexus. You see, Daniel Bryan was different from the prototypical WWE superstar. In a world where the biggest stars in the company were the biggest stars, Daniel Bryan was 5'10", and like 200 pounds. While his fighting spirit won over the audience, they wanted to see him succeed. The WWE always saw him as a B+ player. The Rock would call himself the people's champ, but legitimately Daniel Bryan was a man of the people. Because if a little guy could beat the odds and become a star, then anyone could. And on this night in August, seeing him stand side by side with the WWE Superman John Cena, it was like seeing a twisted reflection of what is yet to come. Also, Chris Jericho was there. He'll be important later, so I'll just tell you, he wears a sparkly jacket. To peel back the curtain a little bit, when a group of young talent appears on the scene like this, it's a smart move for the company to back them so they can make their investment worth it. They put a lot of money and time into these guys. Wins and losses in professional wrestling are not the end of the world, but if your new big bad or super group loses when it really matters, it can kill the momentum of the group. And at SummerSlam 2010, after a bunch of eliminations and a star-making showing from Daniel Bryan, the Nexus loses a 2-1 lead to Super Cena. Super Cena was a term used to describe this era of unstoppable John Cena, normally paired with a bunch of Cena wins lol memes. The Undertaker works because he presents himself like an overwhelming and unstoppable force, but at the end of the day, the Undertaker loses. This guy is not supposed to be an unstoppable force. He's supposed to be their Mickey Mouse. The Nexus really struggled after that. Michael Tarver was excommunicated, Skip Sheffield got injured. They would hold gold from time to time. Of course, leader Wade Barrett didn't get to win the big gold, but the likes of Justin Gabriel, Heath Slater, and David Otunga did win tag gold. Heath Slater would later become the one-man band and come out to the ring playing air guitar, and you may know David Otunga best from getting pegged by She-Hulk. Living the dream. At some point in the group's lengthy stint, they managed to force John Cena to join the Nexus, and maybe this could spell a big change. Nexus John Cena could be the modern equivalent of NWO Hulk Hogan. People wanted their NWO Cena so bad, but in the end, John Cena outsmarted them. Again. The group was becoming more and more splintered, and some of the guys were sent back down to the developmental program. At the same time, NXT was continuing with Season 2. Despite the last contestants tearing down the joint, they still decided to continue the show. This season had such rookies like Kaval, Titus O'Neil, Alex Riley, and Husky Harris. Husky Harris, as the name suggests, was a big guy, and while he initially debuted with a sleeveless shirt, they eventually made him take it off so everyone could comment on his big gut. Oh, look at this guy. Look how funny he looks. What kind of name is Husky Harris? You will never, ever make it in the WWE. So after hearing all of this, what did he do? Husky Harris and Season 2 runner-up Michael McGillicuddy would escape to the main roster and join the Nexus. And the Nexus kept losing and losing as John would verbally run them down night after night after night, until the group splintered so much and distrust ran rampant. What they needed was a new leader. Enter CM Punk. Now, CM Punk was no stranger to leading a group. The first night the Nexus attacked, he was actually in the match with John Cena with his Straight Edge Society by his side. The Straight Edge Society was a stable, a professional wrestling group, but it was run more like a cult. The leader, CM Punk, would give sermons about the dangers of drugs and alcohol and how much better he was than everyone else. He would waltz around with his Jesus-esque hair, but then shave the heads of all those who would join the group until eventually he would lose a match to Rey Mysterio and have to shave his own head. Yeah, it was a very common story when I was a kid. It imprinted on me. But now that CM Punk was in charge of the Nexus, he would run it like a cult. Instead of a group being bound together by their common struggle, it was now an egotistical lunatic hazing wrestlers through initiations where he had them whip each other until they drew blood. Husky Harris would take the brunt of this abuse, and the significance of these angel's wings tattooed on his back is not lost on me, and hopefully it's not lost on you either. More and more members of the original Nexus would leave to go form the Core on SmackDown, a group made up of equals and no leaders, and spelled with 2 R's, as this new Nexus would come face to face with Randy Orton. You know Randy Orton. You probably know it from the RKO out of nowhere meme, but what wrestling fans at the time knew him as was a sadistic and disturbed man. He would circle around the ring, hearing voices in his head telling him to hurt people. Here's a short list of things Randy Orton accomplished in his career in WWE. Attacked and kissed Triple H's wife in front of him, hit his finishing move on multiple women, also attacked a ton of old people, including Mick Foley, who he kicked down the stairs. He also punted the head off John Cena's non-wrestling dad, kidnapped Paul Bearer, attempted to set The Undertaker on fire, successfully blew up John Cena with a bunch of pyrotechnics, twisted a wrestler's earring gauge with a screwdriver, among many other horrible, horrible things. And those are just the shenanigans his fictional character got up to.
The very first time I met Randy, we were in Cape Town, South Africa at the TV hotel. And I walked by the men's bathroom and he had his hands around the urinal and he goes, "Hey Code, look at this." And he yanked the entire urinal out of the wall. The entire, like a superhuman strength, plaster ripping off the thing, flood just sweeping out into the lobby, and he giggled. And
needless to say, Randy is a real dangerous pervert who gets off on hurting people. And when the new Nexus came face to face with him after costing him the championship, that's what he did. Leading up to WrestleMania 27, Randy Orton, on his way to face CM Punk, would systematically take out every member of the new Nexus by punting them in the head and taking them out of action. I want to interject intermittently whenever it fits the story that this is the era I actually started to watch wrestling, and WrestleMania 27 was the first big event I ever bought and watched myself, and by that I mean I made my parents spend $50, or maybe $60 if it was the big one, to buy it. And after WrestleMania, the new Nexus survived for a little bit, but those punts never really left the group. They were all treated so poorly. And then on the June 27th, 2011 episode of Monday Night Raw, after a tables match, CM Punk would walk up to the ramp, sit cross-legged, and verbally disintegrate everyone's preconceived notions of the wrestling landscape. He said everything that the audience was thinking. The infamous pipe bomb promo, if you're a wrestling fan, then you've heard the story of how important this moment was, but if you aren't, then there's some important context required. At the time, fans believed that the product was getting sterile, and it was all the fault of WWE chairman and head of creative Vince McMahon and all his cohorts. This was most noticeable in the asinine rules the company would push on the talent. You couldn't mention any wrestlers not in the company, or ones that have left the company. You can't mention any other wrestling organizations, and you can't even say the word wrestlers because WWE talent were superstars. And in just 7 minutes, CM Punk called John Cena a corporate ass kisser just like Hogan and Dwayne, and went on to say that Dwayne and Cena being scheduled for next year's WrestleMania made him sick, as the previous year's WrestleMania featured Miz and Cena being overshadowed by his eventual match. That's right, the real-world Mike Mizanin had his only WrestleMania main event overshadowed by the man he modeled his life around. It's really sad, actually. Punk broke the fourth wall and mentioned wrestlers like Colt Cabana and Brock Lesnar who weren't in the company at the time. Brock would later come back the next year after being a monster in UFC to become an even bigger, unstoppable monster and beat the shit out of John Cena. But we'll come to that later. Mentioned rival companies and indies. He called himself the best wrestler. Shit on the USA Network, which Raw was currently airing on and still airs on to this day. Then Punk aired his grievances about being barely promoted and publicly called out stooges in the back who weren't even parts of the show at that point. Oh, and also, and I'd like to think that maybe this company will be better after Vince McMahon's dead, but the fact is, it's just gonna be taken over by his idiotic daughter and his doofus son-in-law and the rest of his stupid family. And then at the end of it all, his microphone is silenced as he uses the WWE's current anti-bullying campaign to call out the hypocrisy. And he's right, despite attempting to be a role model to young children and paragons of hope, Vince McMahon and John Cena were both bullies. At least in character. And again, everyone says they remember exactly where they were when something impacted them. And I remember down to the exact minute detail where I was when I saw this. That's not really relevant to the pipe bomb historically, but what is it was just on the cusp of my rebellious attitude. It was when I was developing it that never really left me. This guy, CM Punk was a tattooed up, piercinged out guy who swore and spoke his mind up against the clean-shaven, marketable face of the company in John Cena. And then they had one of my favorite matches of all time at Money in the Bank 2011 that I watched at the Gummy Bear Brothers house, but that's not important to the story, so let's move on. It is important, however, that this will be cited as one of John Cena's greatest losses. But it won't be the last. The shiny veneer was beginning to shatter and crumble. You guys remember that one show I talked about earlier? Back on NXT, Season 3 was titled NXT Redemption and featured rookies eliminated from the past seasons, but they just kind of kept running shows and stopped doing challenges, and then nobody got eliminated for like a year, and then NXT turned from a pseudo-fake reality game show to another wrestling show where they have normal matches and feuds. Not to say that that was a bad thing, because quite honestly, it's the best thing that could have happened to NXT. The Redemption cast only featured guys not currently on the main roster, which didn't account for the new Nexus, who after CM Punk went his own way and became the WWE champion, they had nowhere to go. At the time, NXT and FCW were still running concurrently, so as NXT Redemption was developing into its own brand, FCW was still there as a developmental platform. I wanted to tell the story in canon as much as possible, like list the events as if the wrestlers are real living people, but I think it's interesting to chart the character's growth. Husky Harris was abandoned by his new leader and left out to dry by corporate bullies, so we went back down to developmental to hit the drawing board. But real-life man Wyndham Rotunda was a southern boy and third-generation wrestler who followed the traditions of the sport, but he was also a huge horror fan. After heading back down to FCW, he would wrestle a handful of times under the name Axel Mulligan, a monster who wore a hockey mask like Jason Voorhees from the Friday the 13th franchise. But that character didn't last as long either, as he would continue to develop his new persona. But sometimes, to pave the future, you have to look at the past. Back in 1995, the then WWE featured an eclectic man known as Waylon Mercy, a character heavily based on the popular film Cape Fear, like all good horror gimmicks. But he wasn't a voodoo shaman or an undead wizard. Waylon would charm people with his tongue. His words were what made him powerful. The soft-spoken man with the knife tattoo on his forehead pointing down to his face walked around in a Hawaiian shirt and spoke of a power we couldn't see and the way life twists men to do the worst he's capable. If you haven't heard of Waylon, it's because the gimmick didn't make it very far, but it did have a very important footnote inspiring a future WWE star. Heading back down to NXT on June 20th, 2012, after limping on with the never-ending redemption season, NXT and developmental brand FCW would fold in and become the most famous iteration of the show. It was a small venue held exclusively on the campus of Full Sail University in Florida, and would serve as the new developmental brand that people could actually watch regularly, as it was a fixture of WWE's website, and then eventually their streaming service, the WWE Network. A smaller venue, different branding, and the show was kicked off by Hall of Famer, the American Dream Dusty Rhodes, being named the interim general manager of NXT because he was actually the leading force of creative for these new class of kids who would later call themselves Dusty's Kids. And this NXT was different, seeing the debuts of new superstars like Bo Dallas, Damian Sandow, Seth Rollins, formerly Tyler Black, most well known for his stint in the Wrestling Society X. That's not true. He's more well known for other things. I just want to tie those videos together. NXT shaped the current era of stars that currently populate the WWE. So each episode of NXT would feature debuts of the wrestlers actually wrestling, along with video vignettes hyping up the debuts of the wrestlers. They would talk about Antonio Cesaro being strong, Leo Kruger being born somewhere else, Richie Steamboat being Ricky Steamboat's son. But then there were the vignettes that would hint, note warn, at the arrival of Bray Wyatt. B-roll of an abandoned sundown-looking town as the camera moves through a swamp where we see the man's reflection for the first time. He spits his sermons while hands reach up to him from out of frame like he's a god amongst men. This was the birth of Bray Wyatt, who was yet to debut. But when he spoke, good things come to those who believe in Bray Wyatt. Parents, stop lying to your children and tell them that monsters aren't real. Your children should be looking underneath their beds at night. They should be worried because monsters are real. The boogeyman is real. I am real. Good things come to those who believe in Bray Wyatt. And week after week, they would air new vignettes and similar B-roll as Bray Wyatt would give new sermons. Sermons that worked as more and more figures began to emerge around him, whether they be bald or bearded. People wanted to hear what this mysterious man had to say. And that's what Bray was all about in the early days. It's not that he was undead or a demon. It's that we don't know what he was. or what he was capable of. But on the July 11, 2012 episode of NXT, his weekly sermon was on how the mortal man cannot harm him, and that they should fear him. But what are they gonna do to him? What can they do? All they can do is
Run.
And that was just paraphrasing. Because when the vignette ends, it lets the people know that Bray Wyatt will be in action as a hush fills the small arena. Eventually, he makes his entrance alone. No weapons or backup, just a microphone in his hands. I can only imagine what people must think of me, man. You don't understand me, but you will in time. In time, you will understand exactly who I am, man. And in time, you will understand exactly what I am capable of, man. And then, and finally then, you will understand what I am. But for now, I am the angel in the dark. My name is Bray Wyatt. Pleased to meet you, man. That wasn't paraphrasing. And focus on what he called himself, Angel in the Dark. A lot like the wings of an angel on the back of Husky Harris after he was whipped under Leader's orders. He sacrificed. And for what? Now, normally when a wrestler changes their name, it means that they are a separate character. Perfect example, former Nexus member Michael McGillicuddy would later rebrand as Curtis Axel. We all know they're the same human, they have the same face, but they aren't the same character. Alternatively, there are characters like Festus, a brain-dead hillbilly who later joined CM Punk Straight Edge Society and became Luke Gallows. I like the implication that current-day Gallows, who is still in the WWE, is like canonically Festus. Like, all it takes is a couple drinks and he's back on the wagon. When Bray Wyatt started out, of course people were gonna throw Husky Harris in his face. However, they cannot be the same person. But the more his story went on and unraveled, the more it seemed like Bray Wyatt and Husky Harris were in fact one and the same. Is it possible an abandoned Husky Harris fled back to his hometown and sought shelter in the threshold of a holy sister who showed him the way? Because who is more at risk of falling into cults than those who have nothing left to lose? Rock bottom. But Bray Wyatt is no rock bottom. What makes Bray so scary is how cordial he seems. He ended his promo with "pleased to meet you." He shakes the referee's hand, but then when the bell rings, he shows no remorse. He tosses his opponent around inside and outside the ring and seems to take immense glee in hurting him as he rolls around the apron with a smile on his face. He performs a charged running splash in the corner, but then before his opponent's lifeless body can collapse to the ground, he catches him. And they dance. Bray Wyatt plays with his food and then plants a kiss on his forehead before finishing him off and pinning him for the 3. Like some kind of fucked up baptism. What made Wyatt stand out in the early days of NXT is that he was the only character. NXT was dominated by guys whose gimmicks was, I'm a good wrestler, because developmental is where you develop your performance. But not Bray. Sure, his mic skills would get better as he went along, but he just stood at this level above all the others. He wasn't unreachable because he was better than everyone. He was unreachable because nobody knew what to expect. How do you stop that man? And that was extenuated over the next couple of episodes as they held a tournament for the inaugural NXT champion. Everyone on the roster was competing for a shot, but Bray was nowhere to be found for weeks. And then in the climactic moment where Seth Rollins, formerly Tyler Black of the Wrestling Society X, I'm gonna stop mentioning it, rose to the top of the promotion, everyone came out to watch and lift him up as their guy, except for the absence of Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt doesn't care for the NXT title. And he certainly doesn't care about Seth Rollins, and how this sets him up as one of the company's next top guys. Yet. Even after the tournament, Wyatt had been missing for months until November 7th, when he showed up on the ramp to confront Jason Jordan in the ring, back when he had hair, and before he became Kurt Angle's illegitimate son. See how much additional information you're absorbing through this story? Bray Wyatt is finally ready to speak publicly, which he does say a lot. But the line that sticks out to me is, I'm awake now. And look, Daddy, I got my wings back. We don't know where he's been the last couple of months, but we've seen those wings before. Jason Jordan is looking for a fight. You foolish child. You have no idea what you're messing with, man. Jason, you got it all wrong, man. I never wanted to hurt you. I wanted to help you. I mean, you're no match for me, Jason. Jason, I'm a monster. A monster, Jason. And I am never alone. Similar to his first match on NXT, Bray Wyatt seems to be acting nice, It's as if he believed he's doing Jason Jordan a favor. The thing about a cult leader, a man with a silver tongue, is that sure, he's intimidating and powerful, and we've yet to see him lose, but why would you get your hands dirty when you can easily have someone else take out the trash? Bray Wyatt is not here to fight Jason Jordan. He is joined by a giant of a man with a long, shaggy beard, sweaty wife beater, and jeans. He looks like he came right from a swamp. This mountain batters Jason Jordan. He mauls him, and Jason tries to fight back, but to no avail. All the while, Bray stays on the ramp, and he watches. And he laughs. A sidewalk slam to the mat calls for the end as the disciple makes his way back up the ramp to Bray. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome the first son of the Wyatt family, Luke Harper. Bray seems pleased with the work his first son has accomplished. Wait a minute. Did he just say first son? The next week, there is no match, but some words from the silver-tongued devil. We've seen glimpses of Luke Harper before, but we didn't know where Bray finds these people, how these men become sons of the Wyatt family. But in this sermon, we see Luke sitting patiently as he hangs on every word, and yet Bray seems to look past him. He continues talking about how no mere man can stop him, how outsiders paint him as a liar. He looks into the camera, and then at something past the camera. Or someone. He says a lot here, and as much as I've practiced memorizing these promos by doing them in a mirror when I was a kid, we'd be here all day if I quoted everything he said. But the line of utmost importance is the way the sermon session ends. How do you stop something that can never be destroyed? And if you're looking for that angle, please come find me. I'm out here with all my friends. I'm the king of this jungle. If you're looking for my whereabouts, look in the sky. Follow the buzzards. Follow the buzzards. Follow the buzzards became a famous line of the families, becoming less about finding their location and more about following them to salvation. The next week, we see a similar sight, but this time Bray brings a rocking chair out to the ramp. There's nothing in your pathetic little life that ever could have prepared you for this night. Tonight, I give your life purpose for the first time ever. Congratulations, little lamb. Luke Harper lumbers down the ramp to his next victim after awaiting Bray's orders. Yet again, Bray sounds like he's doing good work. He is just. He is bringing purpose to the lost. Harper chokes his opponent out, decapitates him with a lariat, all while looking to Bray for his approval. In quick fashion, quicker than Jordan, a sidewalk slam ends the match. I warned you. I warned all of you. 2,000 years ago, I am the eater of worlds. And when I decide it's time to start hurting people, believe me, there'd be none of you left. Bray Wyatt is not just a dangerous man. He believes he is a vessel that a deity speaks through. He's been around for thousands of years, and every time he warns the people, every time he chooses mercy. But not anymore. What's interesting is between last week's episode of NXT and this one, two NXT superstars in Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns would debut on the main roster as one unstoppable unit, known only as The Shield. I just thought you might want to know that. It's not like I mentioned that Team Hell No showed up on the next episode of NXT. A team made up of a burnt demon man Kane and the world's biggest underdog Daniel Bryan, who got really popular after hugging it out in couples therapy. And they say there's no romance in wrestling. We wouldn't see the family again until December 12th, as Bray spits more venom on the stage. Love makes me rich. Love makes me powerful. Love allows me to stay immortal. Because I figured it out, man. I figured it out a long, long time ago. I'm the eater of worlds, kid. And I know power. I want you to share this sensation with me. I want you to feel what true power is. I'd like to introduce you to your opponent, my son. Good luck, kid. You're gonna need it. A sermon that would normally call on the entrance of Luke Harper, but not this time. This time, a bald, ginger-bearded giant drags Bray's signature rocking chair to the ramp so he can keep his front row seat. He's dressed head to toe in a jumpsuit that looks almost like he just escaped from a mental institution. Is this the man Bray was looking at? Could there possibly be more? Before this new giant can disembowel his opponent, Bray brings his head down and whispers something to the man. Whispers are the main form of communication of those who lurk in the shadows. Someday the day will come where someone whispers something back to Bray. But for now, the monster tosses his opponent around the ring and slams him for a quick win. What a horrifying introduction for whoever or whatever this is. Welcome the second son of the Wyatt family. Rowan. Follow the Buzzards. The Buzzards no longer represent where they are. They represent where they want to be. December 26th is the final NXT of 2012, and to celebrate, it's a clip show of the year in review. Gotta fill a weekly show somehow. Also, this was filmed on Christmas Day. What do you want them to work on Christmas? A large portion of this episode includes the last couple weeks of the Wyatt family's formation and path of destruction. While it is just a clip show, Bray does show up to grace us with some words of encouragement. Look at that. It's another new year. Another chance for you to pay off your debts. Another chance for you to lose that 10 pounds you've been trying to get off. Another chance for you to muster up the courage to talk to Maria down at Cubicle 8. Or another chance for your loved ones to betray you. In my name, Happy New Year. And those words hold heavier now, knowing what was bound to happen in 2013. 2013, the year I stopped watching wrestling, yay! Not only did I miss the entire Shield story, but I also missed the beginning of my favorite story in modern wrestling. The Wyatt family. Early 2013 was all about the Wyatt family working as a unit. Like the January 9th, 2013 episode of NXT where the family participated in their first announced match. If you're tired of being treated like a piece of trash, I can give you hope. I can give your life meaning. I can give you strength. I bite the head off the snake just to taste its poison. Just like any good cult leader, he begins with insecurities and then tells the masses how he can alleviate them. For I know that when we are alone, we are weak and frail. But when we come together, when we unite, we are strong. We are dangerous. We are family. Bray Wyatt proves his point as he is eventually joined by Luke Harper and Eric Rowan, dragging the rocking chair out to the ramp, and acting like a father of the sons to the Wyatt family. He says, "Make me proud, boys." Comma is important there, not to be confused with the Proud Boys, which objectively is a very funny name for your hate group. The Sons make Bray Wyatt proud by systematically dismantling their opponent as he watches on in glee. Harper lays one of his opponents out with a discus lariat, and after the bell, the three of them walk back as the camera lingers on the massacre left in the ring. We've seen Eric Rowan and Luke Harper individually, but now we get to see them work together, not just in the pursuit of pleasing their boss, but the respect and fear of others. Because most of the sermons thus far have been about how no one respects them, how they call Bray a liar, and his son's brainwashed. They don't care about material possessions, but they do care about the respect one gets by holding gold. What marked this new version of NXT as different was the introduction of the NXT Championship, a belt that could be won and defended and likely meant you would make it to the main roster of the WWE. I mean, the first NXT champion, Seth Rollins, had already debuted with the Shield, but still continued to wreak havoc on NXT with his brothers by his side. And the slab of beef he dropped the title to, Big E, was also on his way to the main roster and became Dolph Ziggler's muscle. The first of many. So on the January 23rd episode of NXT, when WWE Hall of Famer Shawn Michaels showed up to announce the brand new NXT Tag Team Championships and a single elimination tournament to crown the title holders, all bets were off. The first match of the tournament, Wyatt family versus Percy Watson and Yoshitatsu. Percy Watson, a relative newcomer who competed in the second season of the original interpretation of NXT, and Yoshitatsu, a workhorse that had been in the business for much longer. Their differences are shown in the way they attempt to fight the Wyatts. But that's the issue here. Their differences. Bray Wyatt extends his arm and leads Harper and Rowan to the ring while he sits in his rocking chair and watches. He watches the fear in Percy's eyes. He watches as he attempts to use his youthful agility to no avail. He watches as Yoshi fails to escape their grasp. Yoshi and Percy are friends, but they aren't family. Harper and Rowan keep trading tags to continue battering Yoshi in the corner. Once Percy gets in, he manages to use his speed to finally knock Harper down. This could bring the winds of change into this match, but the momentum is stopped as Rowan is there to break up the pin, which is enough of a distraction to get hit with another discus lariat and end the match. The family comes back together and looks off, past the camera again, but this time they aren't focusing on anyone specific. just the crowd as a whole. Oh, and then the 3MB loses to Neville and Oliver Gray, the most British team ever, I think. The 3MB, made up of a band who keeps talking about how great they are but haven't actually played any instruments, all while bringing something original to the table. Jinder's the fun one. Remember Heath Slater from before? Yeah, that's him. The next week, the tournament rages on as the team of young upstarts Bo Dallas and his partner Michael McGillicuddy advanced to face the family. Yes, that Michael McGillicuddy. I know I mentioned him very sparingly, but as in the former new Nexus member alongside Husky Harris, the fallen angel. There's some kind of history here, and yet Bray Wyatt seems to direct his focus to Bo Dallas. Because it was just February, the WWE held their annual special, the Royal Rumble, in January. The Rumble consists of 30 men entering the ring in 90 or so second intervals and throwing each other over the top rope to eliminate everyone and win an opportunity against a champion at WrestleMania. The WWE, when the brand split is in place, has two top titles on Raw and SmackDown, their two main shows. So while normally the winner will choose the champion of the show they're on, they have the ability to pick the other title. I bring this up because some NXT superstars fought in a different tournament in a separate location to win an opportunity in said Rumble. And the winner of that tournament was Bo Dallas after knocking Luke Harper out of the tournament. In the midst of this new tournament, Bray greets Bo to congratulate him. I wanted to congratulate you, Bo, on winning the NXT tournament and entering your first Royal Rumble match. Ooh, it must have been very exciting for you. I hope you enjoyed your 15 minutes, because time's up. Bo stands up for himself as Bray laughs in his face. He beat Luke Harper once and he intends to do it again. But during the match, Bo begins unfazed and then gets battered and beaten by the Suns. He eventually manages to slip out of harm's way and lifelessly tag in Big Mike. Michael is fresh and ready to fight, but Bray leaves his chair for the first time and grabs Big Mike's foot. The referee sees this and goes to throw him out, but in the distraction, the Suns use the numbers advantage to win the match. Bray picked up these men by spewing words that they needed to hear. Cult leaders prey on the desperate and tell them they can get rid of all their problems. It looks like Bray's entering the ring to pick up the scraps, but instead he extends his hand to Bo Dallas as his partner still recovers from the beatdown. This is how you break a person down. Of course, Bo refuses and pays the price. Bray sends the Suns to circle the ring, and then when Bo is distracted, he runs at Bo in the corner, dances with his body, and gives him the kiss of death. This is only the beginning, he says as he shakes the hand of Bo's now limp arm. He's refused the call of the family, and they are not happy. February 13th, 2013, Neville and Oliver Gray made it to the finals of the tag title tournament and stand in the ring ready to face the Wyatt family, along with Commissioner Dusty Rhodes. But before the match, nobody believes in you. We are bigger than you. We are stronger than you. We are dangerous. We are monsters. We are undefeatable. The world wants to see you broken, and tonight, the world gets what the world wants. Follow the buzzards. And the match goes as normal like the rest, with Bray watching from his chair. But when Oliver Gray throws Harper to the outside right in front of Bray, he gets up and never leaves the apron. He is firmly out of his chair. The British team are systematic. They double team, they target limbs, they do everything in their kit to knock the big men down, and Wyatt seems more concerned than ever. His promo on the ramp was all about how threatening they are and how nobody believes in the other team. And they should be afraid. But without that fear, without that power over them, the respect that comes with these titles have no power. So when Gray is thrown to the outside, Bray takes advantage, but this time the referee does not see it. But Commissioner Dusty is out there to crown the new champs, and he does see it. He faces down with Bray Wyatt and then ejects him from the match and sends him to the back. Bray keeps his composure for the illusion of fear, but his smile fades as he tries to obscure his face with his hat. Rowan and Harper are strong, but now they are alone for the first time. And in the end, that's what cost them, as the fresh Neville gets the hot tag and redirects Harper into Rowan. They're falling apart without their leader. Neville gets the win, crowning him and Oliver Gray as the first ever NXT Tag Team Champions. The last couple weeks, the last couple months, have been focused on introducing these new sons and then seeing them work together in tag action. We actually haven't seen Bray Wyatt in a match since last year. So on February 20th, 2013, Bray comes down to the ring dressed as a butcher, flanked by his drones as Yoshitatsu stands alone in the ring. One half of the team they dismantled in the first round of the tournament that they lost. Bray Wyatt contorts his body upside down as the sons of the family circle the ring. He sustains no damage off of Yoshi's attacks, then he wails on him in the corner. And like the others before him, corner, dance, kiss. He's here to prove a point, to make an example out of Tatsu. So he throws his body to the outside and calls his sons into the ring. You really let me down, boys. And how could you? After everything I did for you. Rowan, this man, he is your brother. He protected you. You love him. You lean on him when you need protection. Where was he? What starts out as a leader revitalizing hope and playing mediator quickly turns south. This, your brother, is the man that caused us to lose the NXT tag titles. How do you feel? How do you feel now? Hit him. Hit him. Hit him now. Rowan follows orders and strikes Harper, harkening back to the new Nexus's form of unjust punishment. And then he directs his attention to the other side. Harper, you are my general. Harper, I lean on you. Doesn't your back hurt from carrying him for his whole life? Don't you want vengeance? How do you feel? Hit him. Harper hits Rowan, and then Rowan hits him back. They begin to brawl in the middle of the ring. Whatever the family told them would greet them in salvation. This is not it. Bray encourages them and then quickly breaks them up. That taste in your mouth. Taste of loss. I don't want you to have this feeling again. I'm proud of you, boys. Abuse followed by praise and love. He directs their anger, and now they can harness it. That's why 2 weeks later, they begin to make some more enemies. The show starts with what was supposed to be a tag match with the new tag champions, but Neville has to take the other team on all by himself because Gray has uncharacteristically not shown up. It's only in the middle of the match that we find out what happened, as the family drags Gray's lifeless body out to the ramp and drapes the tag title on him. After the match, Neville goes to check on Gray, but the family has already disappeared. On the same show, Bo Dallas talks about his experience in the Royal Rumble match and about how all his detractors chalk it up to luck, and then a familiar face comes to greet him. Luck. Luck is exactly what I'd call that. Hey, Bo, I saw the Shield. They laid you out something dirty, something real nasty, kind of like I did. Now, had you not refused my hand, the Wyatt family, we could have protected you, Bo. No luck necessary. Previously, there was meant to be a match to determine the next contender for the NXT Championship, but the three brothers in arms of the Shield, a stable of 3 former FCW and NXT members, gone to the main roster to take what they believe they are owed. They stand for each other, and their bond makes them strong. The invasion seems along the lines of the Nexus, but their bond is more in line with a family. And now, this family has taken notice. Apparently there's another powerful group working as a unit, one Bray believes he can protect people from as long as they join him. Bo turns him down again as Bray directs his attention towards the interviewer. What a foolish young man, wouldn't you say? Because tonight's main event is a triple threat match for the #1 contendership for the NXT Championship. If you don't know, most single matches have set rules that the competitors must comply with lest they be disqualified and lose the match. But in a triple threat, which features 3 people, there's no disqualification because it would be unfair to have 2 people lose just because one broke the rules. So the only way to make a triple threat fair, throw the rules out the window. That's how the main event is interrupted. As Bo Dallas is about to win the opportunity of his life, Bray grabs his opponent out of the pin and pulls him to the outside, which costs him the match. The Wyatt family has been busy, but not with recruiting friends, but making enemies. The next episode of NXT is made up of the enemies of the family seeking revenge. Bo Dallas calls out Bray Wyatt, and so does Neville after they incapacitated his partner. If they wanted to get noticed, then they definitely have. In my world, there are no clocks. In my world, there is no time. There are no machines, no distraction. There are no phones, no communication. The women protect the young. We come from the dirt, and we are not afraid to make the ultimate sacrifice to protect what is ours. That word, sacrifice. And the question that I have to ask Bo Dallas, how far are you willing to go? How far will you push the envelope, Bo Dallas? Because if you're not willing to make the ultimate sacrifice, you've already lost. We don't know a lot about the family beyond who they are and how they found each other, but here for the first time we hear how much they value sacrifice. what it means to them. But Bo refuses to back down in the face of fear, and for the first time since his debut, Bray is taken to task. Because Bo uses his rage, this fan favorite takes his anger out on Bray, he dragged it out of him. And it works, as Bo uses that rage to fight out of the dance and hit a crazy belly-to-belly suplex for the win. Bo Dallas won the wrestling match, but he may have lost a part of himself in the process. After the match, he's jumped by the rest of the family, and he scratches and claws his way off to fight them and throw them out. But he is caught by the kiss and planted in the middle of the ring as Bray lays over him. This time, instead of Bray gesturing to his brothers, he gestures to the crowd. It was Bray's loss. But any loss the family suffers is the fault of the family. They're thoroughly on the same page, but that doesn't always yield positive results. We see this next week as Luke Harper faces off against Neville. Neville wanted revenge against the whole family, but all he could get was a match with Harper. And it's weird, Harper pushes him around with his head like he's some kind of herding animal. After Neville refuses to get pinned multiple times, Luke looks to the family for guidance and gets none. Rowan is concerned and makes his way to the ring before Neville launches himself at him, and Bray does not leave his chair. It's like he wants to test Harper, but when it starts to seem that they might actually lose this, Bray distracts the referee as Rowan takes Neville down. Harper wins again with a discus lariat. For a family of monsters that constantly talk about being unbeatable, they sure do cheat a lot to win. But I guess that's just the metric of a family. Power in numbers. I suppose the family does make them more powerful. It's worth noting that the entire match there were children screaming and crying. But was that the family's intention? We know we want their opponents to fear them, but they couldn't have expected the children. Rowan and Harper grab Neville by the arms, which looks eerily similar to the Shield's triple powerbomb finishing maneuver, until they are interrupted by Oliver Gray and Bo Dallas, there to even the odds. And the next couple months of the Wyatt family consists of them making tons of enemies, and then those enemies teaming up to even the odds again, and we'd be here forever if I mentioned every match, and it's getting dark. So let's cover the important bits. Bo and Neville have a match against Rowan and Harper. Don't ever applaud a mouse for surviving one night in a cage with a snake. You wanna know why? Bo, Adrian, because everybody knows, sooner or later, the snake eats the mouse. You played with fire, and now you burn. Evidently, all they are big words. They do everything. Bray stares down Neville without actually ever touching him. Bo does the backward stumble he pulled off with Big Mike, and Bray puts his body on the line for the family. But Bo and Neville are just too much together. They lose. Another major loss, all because the sacrifice wasn't enough. Oh, before the next episode happened, WrestleMania happened in New York. And normally I wouldn't mention this because the Wyatts did not appear there, but also I was there. I appeared there. I wasn't on the show, but I was there. It was my first ever WrestleMania to see live. I mean, we were all the way in the nosebleeds, but I had fun. Maybe someday I'll go more in detail about my experience with wrestling shows, but for now, I watched Cena win and everyone was pissed, but I wasn't even watching at the time, so. April 17th, 2013. Bray Wyatt takes out his frustrations on Yoshitatsu. Again, and he absolutely squashes him. It's like his own personal stress ball, except it's a human man. And afterwards, he sits down with his body and picks up a microphone. NXT is nothing but a playground full of puppets to me. Wouldn't you agree, Yoshi? Yoshi's battered body says nothing. It's interesting that he calls them puppets. This is a message, and I hope everyone back there in the locker room is watching, because I need you. I need you to understand there is no man back there, no man that walks on 2 feet on planet Earth that is greater than I. I am the eater of worlds. I believe it is time the beast starts opening up your eyes. Bray Wyatt is an interesting character because despite talking big talk and using people's fear to control them, people don't really take him seriously. There's kind of a sadness in Bray Wyatt. It's not that you feel bad for him, but you start to believe his words. You start to fall for the lies of the family. You start to believe that anyone can be better, and you want him to win. And nobody respects the Eater of World moniker. Every now and then, a main roster WWE superstar will appear on NXT. I mean, the episode before Mania was basically a WWE show anyway. And this week, multi-time champion Chris Jericho, the one with the jacket, is down in NXT looking for a match next week, until he's confronted by Bray Wyatt. Maybe I can help you with that. Where are my manners? My name is Bray Wyatt. People call me the Eater of Worlds. I noticed a change in you as of late. I wanted to make you a deal. I can make you something people fear again, Chris. And all you have to do is take my hand. Carry the chains of the Wyatt family. What do you say, Chris? And then Chris insults his Eater of Worlds name, insinuating that he eats a lot. But Bray truly believes he speaks the truth. He doesn't say he can make Chris better at wrestling. He says he can make people fear him again. And look what he did for Bo Dallas. But Chris picks up on this offer and in return offers a match. If Bray wins, then Chris will willingly join the family and carry the chains. But if Chris wins, Bray will learn a valuable lesson. Early on in next week's episode, there's a triple threat tag match that Harper and Rowan win by laying low and striking from the grass when they're least expected, implementing the teachings of their leader. Speaking of which, you all deserve a hero. A real hero, like Bray Wyatt. I'm a hero that stands for what he believes in, no matter what the cost. I am a hero. Bray Wyatt is the type of hero that when you're sitting at home watching him on your television screen, he stares back at you. We haven't really analyzed the words of these sermons, but amidst the horror and insecurity, you can tell a lot about this character. Despite the actions of the family, he truly believes he is a hero. He believes his actions are just, and he's just here to expose the real heroes that claim to run the company. The current target, the man involved with killing the Nexus. Chris Jericho. Tonight is the biggest choice of my career. I can stand up or I can fall. Tonight I take on 6-time world champion Chris Jericho. Tonight, me, Bray Wyatt, breaks down the walls. Not to go all English teacher, but break down the walls refers to Chris Jericho's entrance theme and a signature submission move, but it could also apply to the walls the company has built around the status quo. What we think we believe, and it may not be true. During Chris's entrance, the family are backed into a corner as Jericho disrespects them. It's almost like Bray is afraid, but he has to keep up his strong veneer and assures the family that everything is fine. But then during the match, as Bray is thrown to the outside, Rowan tries to get involved and is thrown out by the referee. Harper also tries to help, but Jericho is a decorated champ for a reason as he launches Bray into Luke. And then right there, in the middle of the ring, with no one around to help, and more importantly, no one around to see, Bray Wyatt taps out. Not only is this one of the first clean losses we've seen from him, but it's also the first time we've seen him give up. Bray's motives are different from others. He often chooses to mentally toy with his opponent rather than beat them, but here he was, no match for Chris Jericho. When Rowan and Harper lost, they were punished and pitted against each other. When Bray loses, nothing. Harper and Rowan won earlier the same night, and Bray wasn't even out there. They won without him. May 8th, 2013, Neville defends his NXT Tag Team Championships with surrogate champion Bo Dallas due to Oliver Gray's injuries. They stand face to face with the family, the men who injured Gray, the men who have been attacking these two, the men who dragged Bo Dallas down to the swamps. But he uses that rage, they both do, on top of their speed and new teamwork skills. But in the end, after a long competitive match, they are no match for the Giants. Harper and Rowan win the NXT Tag Team Championships. And the family celebrates together. No shenanigans, no numbers advantage, just Rowan and Harper winning a match. Where does that leave Bray? Bray tends to take his anger out after a big loss, but that doesn't really help him in the long run. What he needs is a change. The next week, we see a vignette of Bray Wyatt surrounded by symbols of life and death. And then he comes down to the ring wearing a protective face mask, but not for any injuries, at least not ones we can see. And I look at my own reflection. I see something different than what you see. I suppose you're all wondering as to why I'm wearing this mask, but the answer is so simple, man. Because I see something different. And Jericho, Chris Jericho, shook me a little bit. And he got me thinking to myself that I need to go back to my roots. What does that mean? Go back to my roots. What about this mask is from his past? He can't be talking about Axel Mulligan unless he's not being literal. A mask is used to obscure one's face to the world, but Bray says that he sees something different when he looks in the mirror. Almost like he sees his human reflection and is disgusted, displeased. He sees a human face where there should not be one. Like he wouldn't be more comfortable or more at home with a different face. So people in the human world witness the new face of fear. Frightening. Quite. Because this is not the face of a human being that you should see. This is the face of a monster. This is the face of the Eater of Worlds. And every time from now on that you gaze into my face, I want you to realize that no matter who you are, or how bad you think you are, you can never hurt me. Because I am already dead. Bray Wyatt is clearly human. But is he? Or is this human body simply a vessel for something greater? Something lost to time in the woods in the compound long ago? We don't know how long Bray Wyatt has been immersed in this culture that he's created around himself. I mean, it was him that created it, right? He's the leader? It's this night that we finally get a name for his finishing maneuver. Sister Abigail's Kiss. Who's Sister Abigail? What's interesting is that throughout the match, the mask continuously slips off his face to reveal the falsehood of the new face of fear, but Bray refuses to finish the match before the mask is put back over his face. Sorry, its face. It's either Bray Wyatt does not believe that his face is his own, or he hates the sight of his own face. Backstage, he has a confrontation with whom he calls Mr. Cool Guy, Corey Graves, and again introduces himself as the Eater of Worlds. Then Mr. Cool Guy, too cool for school, throws the same Chris Jericho line back in his face. Oh yeah, you look like you eat. Bray laughs for him, and Mr. I'm So Cool remains still. Because he's so cool. Next week, Bray comes down to the ring to face Mr. Super Cool with his new face on. But during, he convenes with the family without the mask on. In a way, it's showing us the few people he allows himself to be vulnerable with, but not too much. They love him, but they must fear him to stay by his side. When the mask is knocked off, he has a normal Bray Wyatt match, but when he adjusts it back on, he batters Mr. Chill. He becomes more violent. We may be seeing the early days of something trying to break out of Bray Wyatt. Something with a different face. He beats Corey on the steel stairs outside the ring, but eventually Corey manages to escape the dreaded dance. Rowan and Harper just stand by and watch the match, probably by Bray's orders. It's only when Bray is put in a submission that the boys get involved. Bray hits the Sister Abigail for the win, and then they begin to pick up the scraps. But one of the many men they attacked over the last couple weeks runs down to even the odds a little bit. The final days of the Wyatt family in NXT are a lot like this. They pick fights with other roster members, and then all the people that hate them work together to systematically destroy them. In a way, they bring people closer together. Perfect example of their good work. After Rowan and Harper squash another tag team alone, Bray Wyatt enters a battle royal to determine the #1 contender for the NXT World Championship. A battle royal is like a Royal Rumble, except everyone starts in the ring. The match starts with like 20 people and then ends once every competitor but one has been thrown over the top rope and eliminated. He comes down to the ring in a butcher's uniform. The importance of this battle royal has less to do with stipulations and more to do with the paths that he crosses. Bray crosses during the match. Current enemies like Cassius Ohno, former enemies like Neville and Bo Dallas, and figures from the distant past like Mason Ryan. Mason Ryan is in the only current roster member that was a new Nexus member alongside Husky Harris. That Mason Ryan. So he does everything in his power to get him eliminated. He even teams up with other big boy Alexander Rusev. That will be important later. Oh, and this all will be on the test. The final 5 of this battle royal are made up of Bray and his past enemies. He manages to sneak around in the grass like he taught his cohorts to eliminate everyone except for Bo and Neville. In the end, Neville eliminates Bray, but it's this momentary distraction that Bo is able to win. Remember, this battle royal is for the world championship of this promotion, which Bo Dallas goes on to win, and then in a fight to keep the championship all to himself, he slips deeper and deeper into a downward spiral into the dark side until he's alienated everyone, loses the championship, and then he goes on to join a wrestling stable literally called the Social Outcasts. Most well known for having one of the greatest wrestling themes that nobody talks about, but that's not until later. All because Bo refused to join the family, and in the end, it got him to embrace the hate anyway. Bo Dallas was never the same after crossing paths with Bray Wyatt. Next week, the brothers defend the tag titles again, and Bray has some choice words for the challengers. I ain't afraid of snakes. I ain't afraid of fire. I ain't afraid of disease or pain. But you know what really does scare me? I scare me. And the fact that y'all two showed up here this week, again, allows me to understand that you do not favor your ability to breathe. And again, not to analyze every line, but he's afraid of himself? His own face? But which face? Also not afraid of snakes or fire. We'll see if that stays the same. I think it's my fault. I do. I understand. So what I'm gonna do right now is we're gonna start this whole thing over again. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Bray Wyatt, and I'm the Eater of Worlds. And these two men behind me, they are my brothers. But they want to give you a little introduction of their own. And in another display of their strength, they use the numbers game to retain. While the family is beginning to outgrow the individual matches on NXT, they still have a lot of character insight to offer. June 12th, 2013, we get another sermon, but this time it isn't shaky found footage or a live performance. This one is staged with everyone looking right at the camera as it looks up at them. Almost like they stole it from some poor sap who got lost in the woods. I want them to understand that their fathers lie to them. You can't grow up to be whatever they want. I want them to understand that my words are not just words, they cut deeper than knives. As the monologue continues, Bray targets current general manager of NXT, William Regal, and claims that the longer they stay on NXT, the more men will get injured or worse. Considering their track record with taking guys out, I'd believe them. That's why the rest of June is the family tagging together in sanctioned matches and then attacking the #1 contenders for the tag titles, Mr. Cool Guy and Cassius Ohno, after their win. People whom the Wyatts have attacked in the past always come to the rescue and even the odds, even if it doesn't always work. Well, they have made a lot of enemies. They have also dragged a lot of men to the edge of insanity and made them snap. July 3rd, 2013, we get another camera mugging as the brothers tower over the rocking chair in the middle of the bayou. People, mankind, stop being humans the day they turn into the beast, which ironically is the same day they started judging. While Bray hasn't donned his new Face of Fear mask in weeks, we see the debut of Eric Rowan's face covering, an old sheep mask. No expression, no intention, no humanity in those eyes. Just a man turned into a beast. They judge people like me for the way they look, for the way they act, or the way they feel. And what they don't understand is that I am a wolf in sheep's clothing. If you are able to see the monster that lives behind these eyes, then you would understand why you have urine running down the front of your leg, and why the beast around me are walking upright. Bray isn't just talking about the new look or his brothers. He's telling us outright that he is not what he seems he is. He is not human. He is a beast. The body of a human. A body he seems to dislike as he pinpoints the way that humans judge based on looks. But behind the sheep mask and the eyes of the beast, you can't judge anything. You have no clue what's happening behind that mask, and isn't that liberating? By this point, they were preparing for the main roster, Monday Night Raw, but they do have some unfinished business on NXT that I'll run through. We never see Rowan take off the sheep mask. It's only when Bray takes it off for him that we get to see his face. And unlike the new Face of Fear, he doesn't wear it during his matches, so it's often strategically placed on a pole, looking right into the camera, or on the shoulder of Bray's rocking chair, making it the literal beast on his shoulder. When WWE superstar Sheamus comes to visit NXT, the family attacks him. Which doesn't make any sense until you realize that Sheamus was the only superstar that the Nexus attempted to attack, but never could. He's trying to prove that they're better, that he can run groups better than the man who battered the wings into his back, if they are in fact the same. But it's Sheamus' revenge that costs the family their NXT tag titles. And now we're finally done with pitching gimmicks and working house shows and developmental brand or reality shows. From here on out, the Wyatt family are on the main stage, and they will remain there for the foreseeable future.
The July 8th, 2013 episode of Monday Night Raw opens with what the subtitles on Peacock call foreign language, and I think it might be Latin. We see footage of a decrepit, creepy doll abandoned in dying grass, no trespassing signs, an empty rocking chair rocking on its own in an empty barn, and the camera running upside down through the forest. We can put together what this means.
I mean, we can, but the large percentage of WWE viewers don't actually watch NXT. The only time I ever did was when I was recommended specific matches or to watch the Come Tuesday promo over and over. It's really good.
Come Tuesday?
But the WWE audience is introduced to the family as the camera moves in on their faces, and we hear, "We're coming."
That is not the Come Tuesday promo I was referring to. Hey, remember that demon brother or the undead Undertaker who got buried alive but survived with no burns? He's still around.
In a match between Kane and Christian, subliminal footage flashes on the Titantron after the match as we see Bray rocking in his chair.
I have no followers. I only have brothers and sisters, all in the name of the cause.
We see quick flashes of the sheep mask.
People are sheep. You understand me? They can't lead themselves. They need to be led. People buy and sell fear. They worship war. They crave war. And I'm not afraid of their wars. I created war. And I think it's time for the masses to wake up.
The sheep aren't the mark of the beast to hide one's face. It's a mask of shame to show subservience.
They only stand there. They whisper and wonder, but they never do anything about it. But I've seen it all, in my dreams and in my thoughts, and above everything else, I understand. This is not the beginning. It's the end.
The screen cuts to black only to be lit by a tiny match. The match is then used to light a lantern that illuminates the family. As they say,
"We're here."
The arena is pitch black as we see quick glimpses of the barely lit family on the ramp, until the lights turn on and the monsters are already in the ring to attack Demon Kane. Wyatt remains in his chair, just watching the slaughter as the brothers attempt to crush Kane's skull between two sets of steel stairs. Bray gets up to bask in what should be an empowering moment of showing up in front of the masses and taking out the old guard of demons as the crowd chants, "Husky Harris."
Some wrestling fans have a tendency to want to seem as smart as possible at the behest of actually enjoying the thing they paid to go see. I'm not falling for this. This is clearly a work. When did getting worked become a bad thing? Why is believing the thing you like a bad thing? Listen, all the people at home still here that don't like wrestling but like hearing me ramble, there's a certain level of suspension of disbelief you need to get past. I know the steel steps aren't actually made of hard concrete metal, but it's a show. You don't watch a TV show and point out, that's a prop gun. It's not real. He's not actually shooting them. So it's real to them. But this chanting of Husky Harris will eventually fade. But the spirit of Husky never really leaves Bray's side.
The next week on Raw, the Wyatt family jump scares during R-Truth's happy interactive entrance rap and dance. And it's not even a match. Rowan and Harper just batter Truth. A man just out there to spread joy.
They have no issue with Truth the man. They have issue with Truth the name. What if I was to tell you the man who made you is a liar? What if I was to tell you that your own flesh and blood turned his back on you? I would never turn my back on you. And maybe the answers you seek have been slapping you right in the face. Or maybe, just maybe I, Bray Wyatt, the Eater of Worlds, have been the answer all along.
During the first sermon in front of the tough crowd, Truth manages to grab a steel chair and try to defend himself. But instead of a fight, Rowan and Harper leave the ring. Bray takes off his hat and extends his arms. He wants Truth to hit him, as he continuously screams, "What are you waiting for?"
You don't need a complex understanding of wrestling to know that hitting someone in the head with the chair is not a good thing. It's a move reserved for the evil or desperate. Two things that Truth hasn't been for years. Truth is a lovable man of the people, but if he takes the first strike, he may continue down a path he can never return from, just like Bo Dallas's rage.
But Truth hesitates, so the sharks swarm and eventually he is struck by Sister Abigail's kiss.
You are not the truth we seek. Kane, follow the Buzzards. This victim was just a short stop on their way to a bigger target. They want to embarrass the demon. They want to terrorize him.
After committing some beatings on WWE's E! Show main event.
It's the E! Show because it's the 5th most important. I've never watched an episode in my life, and I'm not about to start now.
The Wyatt family isn't on Raw tonight, but Kane is looking for them. But instead of a match with Bray, Kane is put in a match with his former best friend Daniel Bryan for a title shot.
So, let's talk about Daniel Bryan. Earlier, we talked about how young NXT Daniel Bryan was the ultimate underdog, and he still is, but now he is the hottest thing in the company.
Long-haired, bearded, white meat baby face is everyone's guy. I mean babyface as in like a wrestling good guy, he clearly does not have a baby's face. I mean, look at him. When he's on screen, they cheer for him, and when he's not, they chant for him.
But the WWE has a type. They tend not to give the championship to people who are short or have less defined muscles or don't have the perfect face. Whoever becomes the champion extensively becomes the face of the company, and WWE is very worried about how their company will be represented.
So the CEO, who is still alive, Mr. McMahon, comes out every week with a new scheme to keep Daniel Bryan out of the title picture. He puts him in matches with his ex-tag partner, he makes him run gauntlets, he attempts to shave his hair and beard to prove his allegiance to the company.
Classic wrestling story. And this isn't just a storyline. In real life, it was clear that the WWE as a company did not want Daniel Bryan as their guy, despite the chants of everyone in every location they went to.
But despite that, the people fought with their voices and chanted his name at every chance they could get. Eventually, the current champion, John Cena, alleged man of the people, picks out Daniel Bryan to his opponent for the upcoming SummerSlam event.
But Bryan is still missing that one thing. The people love him, and he's been a bad guy before, but if he really wants that championship that keeps getting snuck out from under him and he's screwed out of over and over, he needs an edge.
But before that, Bryan beats Kane. But Kane still attacks him after the match anyway, until he is rescued as Kane's fire is interrupted by the family's messages. The two big men appear in the ring, but Kane makes a beeline for Bray.
If you want to easily kill something, aim for the brain.
But the brothers get a hold of him and Kane is planted with Sister Abigail's kiss.
I've heard you like to call yourself the devil's favorite demon, but you, sir, are no demon. And the devil... Nah, man. But shh.
He holds Kane's lifeless head up so he can hear him better.
But Kane... I'd like to let you in on a little secret, man. You ought to be careful who you say those things in front of, because you never know who might be listening.
The next week they return with more words for Kane after knocking down tons of funk.
Don't ask. The devil's favorite demon is no monster, man. He's an illusion. He's a fairy tale. The demon is a lie. But me, I'm much, much different, man. I'm the man of 1,000 truths. I am Bray Wyatt, the Eater of Worlds, and I am forever. Kane, follow the Buzzards.
Kane uses this opportunity to test the grounds of these so-called monsters as he sets the ring posts ablaze. Of course, Rowan and Harper scramble like startled animals, but Bray remains calm. He isn't afraid of fire. But he will be. Bray's look of disinterest shifts to entertainment when Kane challenges him to a Ring of Fire match at SummerSlam.
A Ring of Fire match, formerly known as an Inferno match that we mentioned earlier in Kane's repertoire, is exactly like it sounds.
Two competitors stand in the ring completely surrounded by fire, and they have a normal match. The fire is just there as a hazard to keep them in the ring, or to keep others out of it. And the next week before SummerSlam, Kane manages to catch the family in another trap and spooks them with even more fire.
But again, Bray is unfazed, which brings us to the Wyatt family's first ever WWE big event.
The match opens SummerSlam as both monsters make their way to the ring and the brothers remain on the outside, which seems to get to them as Kane dominates Bray early on in the match. If the spread out flames weren't bad enough, Bray's first impact with the mat spews the fire upwards.
Bray targeted Kane because he is a false demon in a world where they believe in them. They've seen creatures beyond our world, and he is not that. At least not anymore. But why does Kane want this? Why does Kane want to burn Bray Wyatt alive, just like he was when he was a kid? Is it because he wants to spread the hurt he had to endure, or because he needs Bray to understand the weight of a true demon?
When Bray eventually does get Kane down, he rains fists on him, like the new face of fear. It's part of him now. He doesn't even need the mask. Meanwhile, Luke Harper grabs a kendo stick and tries to get it to Bray, but would fire, it doesn't go well.
I didn't say they were particularly intelligent.
As Kane continues to dominate and toy with Bray, the others panic and attempt to use a fire extinguisher to get past the fire, but to no avail. Eventually, they put it together while Kane is occupied and lie a tarp over the fire and cross the ring of flames. Bray Wyatt held his own, but the family unit is unstoppable together. They hold Kane's body up after a beating, and Bray nails him with Sister Abigail again, this time ending their match.
Bray Wyatt. No, the Wyatt family has conquered the devil's favorite demon.
But that's not enough. They return to the steel stairs they used on him previously and set him up at Bray's feet before attempting to decapitate him in front of their leader as tribute. The lights go out and the stadium is only illuminated by the Wyatt's lantern as they return from whence they came, with Kane's body. Oh yeah, and then Daniel Bryan finally wins the championship in the main event, but is screwed out of it by McMahon's son-in-law and devious serpent Randy Orton.
What a fun night, and afterwards the Wyatts kind of went missing.
In the meantime, we saw the birth of a tyrannical corporate stable known as the Authority, led by McMahon's idiotic daughter and doofus son-in-law Stephanie and Triple H, all around with bodyguards and agents meant to protect their champion, their face of the company, Randy Orton. Then they would eventually recruit The Shield as their lackeys, who previously deemed themselves the Hounds of Justice, who would only fight for each other, become cogs in a greater machine. But Daniel Bryan was not ready to give up as he wins the title back and then it got taken away again and got beat up and screwed by the Authority so often he had to build up his own rebellion. On the front lines of this new rebellion was bleach blonde Miss Opportunity Dolph Ziggler, who was constantly made to prove himself for just a morsel of anyone to believe in him. He just wants some support. He did have Big E by his side at some point, so that's gotta at least help.
Which leads us to tonight.
Monday Night Raw, September 9th, 2013. Dolph Ziggler is set up to face the Enigma, returning Bray Wyatt.
We learned some details from commentary during this match. We learned that we haven't seen Bray in action since SummerSlam. More importantly, we learned that we haven't seen Kane at all since they carried his body away. And 3, apparently Sister Abigail's kiss is named after Bray Wyatt's late Sister Abigail. But what does that mean? Sister as in biological sister, or sister as in religious sister? Where did they even get this information from? Did Bray tell them? And if that's the case, can he even be trusted?
Sorry to spoil the match, but yes, Dolph does unfortunately get caught with Sister Abigail's kiss after successfully avoiding the family, but getting caught in the traditional squash dance. The crowd responded to Bray positively when he was fighting the demon, and while he has no allegiance, he is battering an enemy of the Authority. He looks at the crowd during the match and screams, "Is this not what you asked for?"
And the crowd has to grapple with the idea that, did we cause this?
The segment ends with Bray Wyatt staring daggers into the camera.
So, multiple questions. Who is Abigail, and what purpose does Bray serve in the Rebels versus Tyranny story?
The next week on Raw, we get an actual promo about WWE's charity work transition into the Wyatt spooky vignettes about the lies of society.
Great work, guys.
Subliminal messages as the lantern illuminates their faces again.
They say that patience is a virtue, but in my estimation, it's a lost art. People want everything.
Which sounds like a tape recorder skipping, getting louder, saying now, now, now.
They want more and more of it. They don't realize that beyond their precious city walls, there's another world.
And we do get flashes of their world, their decrepit and distorted world, which reflects their distorted worldview.
And it's full of animals, like yours. My world.
Surrounded by footage of bugs and creatures.
And in my world, when one of my animals is sick or hurt, we don't let him fumble around in agony. We put him down.
Bray turns to the side and talks to the lantern.
You want to see something really scary?
Just then we get flashes of all their victims, all the sick animals they've put down, all with Sister Abigail's kiss, all in Sister Abigail's name.
Don't you worry about a thing, Abigail. I'm gonna put them all down. I'm gonna put them down.
And the next week we see just that, except it isn't Bray competing in a match. It's the brothers facing off in a tag match against the primetime players. Titus O'Neil and Darren Young, also known for their appearances in the early reality show seasons of NXT, Darren Young actually being a former member of the Nexus.
And I get the feeling that makes Bray uneasy.
So the brothers absolutely kick the dog shit out of these two as Darren scrambles. Rowan takes off the sheep mask mid-match to reveal the angry visage of rage that he takes out on poor Darren Young. The match reaches its conclusion as Darren scratches and claws away to tag Titus O'Neil in. Titus fends for himself pretty well, almost taking out the entire Wyatt family until he's blindsided by a discus lariat from Harper. Despite it being Titus who lost the match, Bray targets a terrified and mourning Darren to plant with Sister Abigail's kiss. Another victim put down in her name. Bray Wyatt basks over their limp bodies as he directs everyone to follow the buzzards.
And they've got a long list of victims ahead of them.
On the September 30th, 2013 episode of Raw, after a match between the West African Kofi Kingston and the ballroom dancer Fandango.
I'm not gonna explain everything.
After Kofi's win, the Wyatts come out and Bray has some words for him.
We all fall victim to the games wicked men play. I am no different. For instance, I have spent the majority of my life trying to understand why these horrible things happen to me. Why me?
Kofi, previous tag partner to R-Truth, saw what happened to him, so he instinctively grabs a steel chair.
I would wake and wonder if this nightmare of mine was ever going to end. But it never did. And now, finally I understand what I must do. One by one, they will all fall down. Follow the buzzards. But that's it. There's no attack, no slaughter, just a warning, just the order, the intent that they will all fall.
Big event matches tend to have weeks of build-up, but at Battleground 2013, this was just set up, a match between Bray Wyatt and Kofi Kingston.
Either in a pursuit of revenge or mercy.
Kofi Kingston stands strong in the ring as the family appears at the ramp. He knows he's outnumbered. But when isn't he? Bray Wyatt doesn't just fight Kofi by hitting him, he stretches him limb from limb. This isn't mercy. This is a lesson.
Also during this match, the commentary team keeps making jokes about Obamacare. 2013.
Kofi does manage to hit Bray with impressive offense, but by this point he's too exhausted to capitalize. Bray uses his weight and agility to slam into Kofi at high speeds.
It really is a shame I can't show you guys any of this video footage.
Because Bray hangs upside down like a spider, like he's done before, but this time he contorts his body and crawls backwards towards Kofi Kingston in a legitimately unsettling display. Kofi returns the favor by shooting himself over the rope, landing on the entire family. He seems to be getting his momentum back, but then Bray catches him with a surprise Sister Abigail. Another victim. But it's not over yet as Rowan pulls Kofi up by his head and waits for Wyatt's approval. When Bray nods, they destroy Kofi. And then, the microphone.
There is no right. There is no wrong. All that is left are the mannequins trying to force-feed you what their ideas of purity are.
Bray rises to his feet and then returns to his kneeling position over the body.
But in turn, I promise, there will be none of them left. One by one, they will fall. Follow the buzzards. This was Bray Wyatt's second official big event match, and the last guy he beat went away forever. Well,
at the next event, Hell in a Cell 2013, Luke Harper and Eric Rowan attack The Miz after he called out Bray Wyatt, who had not been seen since, until the big red monster returned to get his revenge, but the brothers managed to scurry. They need to regroup with their leader. But Kane was not there to help Miz, he was there for the family. He takes Miz out as well. The day after, on Monday Night Raw, October 28th, The Miz challenges Kane despite not being medically cleared. The masked monster makes quick work of The Miz.
Oh yeah, I guess I didn't explain that. Kane wore a protective mask to hide his burns for years until getting unmasked in the early 2000s. We know that bit. Later in the 2010s, after being barefaced for years, he returned with a new mask to try and make John Cena embrace the hate.
And then he teamed with Daniel Bryan. So when Kane calls out Stephanie McMahon, you think he's going to defend his former friend after months of torture at the hands of the Wyatt family, but instead he relinquishes the mask to her and pledges his allegiance to the authority.
He calls it best for business.
In the main event of that same Raw, former new Nexus leader CM Punk beats former original Nexus member Skip Sheffield, now rebranded as the Meat-Eating Ryback.
Famous best friends.
Despite not having watched wrestling, you may know Ryback from this clip of him eating chips for some reason. Anyway, Punk puts Ryback through a table before getting ambushed by the Wyatt family. On top of attacking Daniel Bryan backstage earlier in the night, the family uses the numbers advantage to destroy CM Punk.
But what could Bray Wyatt have against the previous leader of the new Nexus and the man who managed to escape that same group? Oh.
Bray smiles as he approached Punk while telling the family, "I've been waiting for this." He attempts to reintroduce himself as Bray Wyatt, but Punk wants none of this as he fights back, although he's eventually planted by the family. Bray moves in on the camera and says,
"The devil made me do it." Almost like the spirit or body of Husky Harris is attempting to apologize for the monster that attacked Punk. Or maybe the devil is someone else.
The week after, the first Raw of November, CM Punk goes one-on-one with Luke Harper as the others watch from the ramp. Wyatt sat in his rocking chair. The match is relatively back and forth until Punk decides to dive at Rowan on the outside as opposed to his opponent inside. Punk manages to steal a win out from under him, but is jumped by Rowan after the match anyway. Bray slowly makes his way into the ring with a big smile on his face and intends to make an example out of Punk until Bryan comes down to the ring with a steel chair and the two main eventers scare off the family. They've lost their advantage. The next week, the two anti-authority rebels take on the authorities' hounds, The Shield, in a 3-on-2 main event. In the ending sequence, CM Punk puts the wildcard Dean Ambrose into a submission, but before he can submit, the Wyatt family appears in the middle of the ring after the lights go out. Before the brothers can pick up the scraps, CM Punk smartly shoved former NXT champion Seth Rollins into fellow technician Luke Harper. Before it can boil over, Ambrose comes in to try and foster peace before coming face to face with the Wyatt family's own wildcard, the man who hides his face, Eric Rowan. Evidently, aside from their differences, it's Harper and Ambrose who attempt to make simultaneous first strikes. Rowan and Harper brawl with Rollins and Ambrose as the leader of the family comes face to face with the strong, silent muscle on the outside, Roman Reigns.
Oh dear God.
The ring turns into an all-out brawl before Bray attempts to state that they have a clear, common enemy.
And all during this fight, the crowd is electric. They chant yes, and this is awesome. It's clear that this is what they want to see.
But they don't always get what they want as the six of them team together to fight Punk and Bryan before even more tag teams from the back come out to even the odds a little bit. CM Punk and Daniel Bryan are assisted by the twin brothers, the Usos, and the regular brothers, Cody Rhodes and Goldust. November 18th, the gaggle of tag teams face off against The Shield, who enter through the crowd, and the Wyatts, who enter through the shadows. During which it's announced that the Wyatt family will continue their numbers advantage at the next event, the Survivor Series, facing off against CM Punk and Daniel Bryan. But for now, we have The Shield and the Wyatt family clashing as they refuse to work together properly.
It says a lot that the family tried to convert the likes of Bo Dallas and Chris Jericho, but what nothing to do with Rollins, Reigns, or Ambrose. Like they sense something else within them.
It's a fight of hatred, but Bray Wyatt screams, "Why don't you trust me?" at the Shield, almost like he's pained by their distrust. Bray even attempts to sacrifice himself to get Ambrose the win. I mean, that's what they did last week. Also, Cody Rhodes hits the crossroads on Roman Reigns.
I just thought I should mention that.
Punk ends up the victor.
Some of these big WWE events have special gimmicks, like how the Royal Rumble has the Royal Rumble match, and Hell in the Cell, so on and so forth. Survivor Series has annual 5-on-5 elimination matches, but it's important to note that the Wyatt family's match is not elimination. All it takes is one pinfall. They are but men, and yet you fear them so much more. CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, I advise you run.
At Survivor Series, we get Punk and Bryan entering like normal, but when the family's visuals appear on screen, we see Bray talking into the lantern again.
She speaks to me. She whispers in my ear. She told me about you, Punk and Bryan. She told me that y'all would be tough as nails. And if we wanted to take you down, we'd have to hunt you like dogs. She was right. But we are the Reapers, and there's nowhere left to run. But how does she know about either of these guys? It's a shame they didn't take his advice.
Although they still hold the numbers advantage, Bray Wyatt will not be participating in this match, at least not officially. This match is all about the contrast of styles, the technical wrestling of the best and the beard against the car crash terror of the family. Bray remains stationary as he trusts that his men are more powerful than these two phony heroes. Rowan takes more advice talking to his sheep mask than Bray Wyatt.
Bray Wyatt's plan is twofold: offer tributes to Sister Abigail, and expose the so-called heroes of the WWE. The phony demon, the man of the people, and the two underdogs the crowd thinks they know.
And Punk proves this by again deciding to jump at Rowan and Bray on the outside before taking out Harper for the win.
That didn't help him win. All it did was embarrass the family.
After the match, Bray gets up on the apron to confront the two, but Daniel Bryan starts his patented yes chant, getting his legions of fans to pressure Bray into the ring, and he refuses the call.
Next week,
TV personality Michael Strahan visits the Raw Zone and is gifted a new mint-condition sheep mask from Eric Rowan while he continues to wear his beaten and battered one.
that's gotta mean something.
Also, we finally get the 3-on-2 match with Bray Wyatt added to the mix after Punk and Bryan challenge them.
I imagine they want their hands on him, and Bray wants to avenge his first loss on the main roster.
But it doesn't matter anyway, as the match is thrown out as the three refuse to leave the ring. They leave CM Punk alone in the ring, but Daniel Bryan, they've taken an interest in him and carry his body to the back just like they did with Kane. CM Punk attempts to help, but is blindsided by the Shield.
In one move, Bray Wyatt takes the family out of the story. They want nothing to do with the Hounds of Justice or the voice of the voiceless, but Daniel Bryan, there's something there. What's that one old saying? Pressure makes diamonds?
The next week, Daniel Bryan comes down to the ring as if everything is normal, acting like nothing happened last week as he faces his vegan brethren Eric Rowan in a one-on-one match. Or so it seems.
While I've been focusing on Monday Night Raw because very few important things happen on their second show SmackDown when the rosters are shared.
But last Friday, the family continued to talk about Bryan like he was in their custody, and now he's just out here fighting one? After a hard-fought match, Bryan manages to squeak out a win anyway. Harper runs in to help Rowan and reprimand him in the same breath, but then Bray appears on the Tron and orders them to stand down.
Don't worry, Bryan. They're not gonna hurt you. Unless I tell them to. Understand something, Bryan. Since I have been on this earth, I have done a lot of horrible things to a lot of good people.
This frame of a giant force that's Bray Wyatt towering over a barely lit Daniel Bryan looking up at him speaks volumes.
I'm man enough to admit when I was wrong, and I was wrong about you, Bryan. I viewed you as this minuscule little creature chasing this uphill war that you could never win.
Referencing the battles with the Authority.
I saw you busy chasing your little girly friend around on television, buying her diamonds. Let me ask you, friend, how long are you willing to live this lie? How long until they discover that your dirty little feet are soiling their red carpets?
Hitting on that nerve that Bryan does not belong where the big boys play.
I understand you, Bryan. I see you for what you really are, but they look at you like you're some sort of circus clown, here for their amusement. They look at you like a gorilla in a cage, son.
Bryan frantically looks around in the darkness.
And I see the monster in you. They can't love you. Not like I can, Bryan. And I understand that together, we can tear the walls off this place.
Worth noting that he said he would do the exact same to Chris Jericho, tearing down his walls.
Together we force them to beg. Together we can bring the machine to its knees. Bryan, open your eyes.
Bryan panics and looks for the family backstage, but is instead greeted by his former partner and former demon, the last man to be kidnapped by the Wyatts, Kane. He sets up a match at the next big event, a 3-on-1 handicap match. And next week, the final Monday before the event, Bray appears on the big screen again.
Although it is your ravenous behavior that drives me to you, your unwillingness to comply is testing my patience. Clock is ticking, Bryan. I need you to understand that I do not wish to watch you suffer, but in my world, there's no such thing as a happy end. There are no fairy tales. I'm not gonna take you up to Pa's house and roll you down a field of dandelions. This story ends the same way it started. Destruction. And at TLC, I need you to know that they're going to hurt you. And I don't care if it kills me, I promise I'm going to prove to you that you are a monster. Just like me. In that moment of serenity, I will take all the pain away. Join us.
Brian.
I thought about analyzing those lines individually and like cutting in between, but I thought they needed to be heard in succession. People criticize Bray's promos for serving no purpose and making no sense, but that's just because they lack creative spirit and aren't actually listening to what he's saying. The important details are that Bryan is resisting the Wyatt family's suggestion more than they expected, and despite framing himself as the crowd's favorite little guy, he is not. Bray knows what he truly is, and he will make Daniel a monster.
The secondary main event of the same show is an example. Harper and Rowan battering the twins, Jimmy and Jay, while Bray watches.
However, prior to TLC, Tables, Ladders, and Chairs, that's the name of the big event, WWE held their annual Tribute to the Troops with questionable canonicity.
Tribute to the Troops is a wrestling show where WWE partners with the American Armed Forces to compete in front of an exclusive army of troops.
Would you believe me if I told you this was a post 9/11 decision? So I watched it anyway.
What was supposed to be a singles match between Bryan and Wyatt has turned into a 3-on-3, including Punk and Cena after the family got involved. Former Marine and star of the movie The Marine, John Cena, wins as the men in camo celebrate on their attack helicopter.
Did I mention this was filmed on an actual army base?
Apparently it's the same show that The Big Show met with Jeff Dunham and his hilarious puppet Peanut. You gotta understand, this was the biggest comedian at the time.
So, TLC, Tables, Ladders, and Chairs.
Despite the match being 3-on-1, Bray remains in his rocking chair as the Monsters tear Daniel Bryan apart for him. It's not impossible that he could pull this one out. I mean, earlier in the night, CM Punk single-handedly took down the protected Shield.
Unfortunately, they didn't look strong enough.
It's only when Bryan is reeling on the ground that Bray steps in and shouts, "It didn't have to be like this." It's almost like he legitimately dislikes hurting Bryan, or at least that's what he's convinced himself. With Bryan thoroughly stuck in the family's corner, Bray crawls towards him slowly like a spider hunting his prey, and Bryan is trapped in his web. But instead of pinning him or beating him anymore, he just extends his hand and asks Bryan to take it. But the fans chant no, 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 and Bryan listens, kicking Bray's hand out of the way. Bray does not take this well as he commands his brothers to finish it, but Bryan refuses to give up. He's got a fighter's spirit and the audience behind him. But Bryan fights up from the bottom. He launches Harper into the barricade and evades Rowan, sending him to the steel stairs they used on Kane. He even manages to trip up Bray on the ropes. Then he attempts to put Bray in his signature submission because he must know that tends to work on Bray. Bray takes offense to this and beats Bryan to a pulp on the mat before planting him in the name of Sister Abigail and getting the win without using his numbers advantage.
Bray wins the match, but he didn't get what he wanted. Bray's goals rarely have to do with the wins and losses of wrestling matches.
The main event of the Raw after TLC, Daniel Bryan finally gets another chance at the snake that stole his title earlier in the year, but Randy gets the match thrown out by disqualification. Bryan has been screwed out of the title again.
He's got talent, but he isn't a monster. You've got to be a monster.
December 23rd, 2013. The Christmas episode! But it just starts with a recap of Friday's SmackDown, where the Wyatts decimated the Rhodes brothers and then threw Bryan off a ledge onto concrete. Aw, I wanted Santa. But then Bryan is fine, I guess.
He's got a strong spirit.
We get a 3-on-3 of the family facing off against the tag champions and Bryan, where Bryan tries to bait Bray into the ring to get the face-off he's wanted for months, but then the brothers of the family take beatings for him. Sacrifice. After enough of the beatings, Bray attempts to sneak attack on Bryan, but it was all part of his plan as he catches him immediately. Bray runs outside the ring, and once again, Rowan gets between them. Bray only enters the ring when he's sure Bryan is down. Eventually, Bryan rallies and chases Bray to the outside through the air. Bray wins the match by pinning Husky Harris's NXT coach, but the beatings don't end there. The family disposes of the Rhodes and tosses Bryan's body in the ring before the lights go out in the arena, and they appear around the chair, looking in the ring at a defeated Bryan. It's next week's New Year's special edition of Raw, where Bryan gets the chance to face Bray, but first he has to beat the other individuals.
And WWE loves when their employees work the holidays.
After a hard-fought match dominated by Harper, Bryan manages to squeak out his devastating knee maneuver and must face a fresh Eric Rowan immediately after. The referee asks Bryan if he is able to compete and is prepared to throw this match out if he can't, but Bryan is doing this to get his hands on Bray. He can't give up now. During the second match, Rowan utilizes his surroundings by tossing Daniel Bryan's body into the stairs and over the announce table. Bryan manages to squeak by another win by quickly rolling up Rowan. Eric Rowan instinctively goes back on the attack, but Luke Harper enters the ring and prevents him, leading him around like he's a rabid dog. Harper keeps Rowan backed in a corner as Bray slowly rises from his rocking chair. The bell rings as Bryan manages to rise to his feet while Bray stalks him. upside down. He takes off in a sprint to squash Bryan, but stops right in front of him, just to look at him. Bray Wyatt turns his back on Daniel Bryan and extends his arms in tribute. But Rowan and Harper get the match thrown out by interfering. Bray lost by disqualification, but I doubt he cares.
Bray Wyatt has motives beyond our comprehension.
The brothers beat Bryan on the canvas as Bray sings an old nursery rhyme before speaking directly to Daniel.
I'm afraid, Bryan, this is where our story ends. I have no mercy left to give. It could have been different. It could have been better. It could have been perfect. This is your fault. I'm going to punish you, and I want you to open your eyes.
Bray Wyatt holds Daniel Bryan's head up by his hair and looks into his closed eyes.
Open your eyes and look at your dismay. Open your eyes, Bryan. This is the end.
Bryan speaks up and admits, "You're right." Bray orders Bryan to say it again, and his legions of fans again chant, "No, no, no." The battered and beaten Bryan gives up. He tells him, "You were always right." Bryan admits that no matter how hard he tries and fights, no matter how much the people cheer for him, it is never enough. He gives in. He gives up. He gives himself. "I am yours." Bryan offers himself up to Bray as the crowd cries in anguish, but Bray plants him with Sister Abigail's kiss and accepts him into the Wyatt family. After that, Daniel takes one last look at the crowd as they chant his name louder and louder. Then he turns his back and walks away with the family.
We've seen Bray Wyatt's corrupting power pull rage and despair out of other wrestlers, but this is the first time they've successfully converted someone to their cause. This was by design. They didn't want Punk or Rollins or Reigns or Ambrose. They chased Bryan down because Bray saw something, saw that he was in need, saw that he needed to be a monster. And in doing so, successfully proves that the crowd's perfect boys are nothing but paper icons. They convince themselves to believe in a false idol when they should have followed the buzzards.
The first Monday Night Raw of 2014 has the normal Wyatt entrance interrupted by the introduction of the new Wyattized Daniel Bryan. Instead of having his own gear, he's dressed more like a small version of Eric Rowan, just without the sheep mask. Almost like he's meant to replace him. But we do get our first look at Bryan working with the family as a team as he tags with Rowan and Harper as Bray watches from his chair, but not before Bray can whisper in his ear.
Whispers follow Bray throughout his whole story. Although Bryan is defeated and opened up to influence, the crowd never abandons him. They never stop chanting yes.
Bray got everything he wanted. Now he just needs to perfect the execution. Unfortunately for him, it's dissension between Harper and Bryan that cost them the match. They lost. January 13th's Raw opens with Bray Wyatt celebrating the good news from his barn compound.
Have you heard the good news? He needed me. He needed me. He was lost. Now he has a home. Your words mean nothing to him now. He only hears my truth. Now he has a home. He has a home. Bryan can no longer hear the cheers of the people. He can only hear the whispers of Bray Wyatt.
After multiple Raws and SmackDowns where different team combinations failed to beat the Usos, Daniel Bryan and Bray team together to fight them themselves,
thus pushing the original members further and further down the attention line. Daddy's got a new favorite.
Maybe that's why before the match can even reach an ending, Rowan and Harper interfere without Bray's orders and get the family disqualified. Jey Uso manages to escape a beating and plant Bryan with a super kick before the twins destroy the family's ramp setup. Bryan looks beside himself as Bray orders him to get to his feet. The fans try to chant yes for Bryan, but Bray whispers something we can't hear in his ear again, so Bryan extends his arms in tribute as the crowd switches to a no chant. They don't want to see this.
I mean, Bryan's whole reason for joining the family was he was beginning to lose the uphill battle, but now that he's with them, they aren't even winning. Even Rowan and Harper used to win regularly.
Bryan offers himself and Bray plants him with Sister Abigail's kiss as he repeats that he's doing this for him in his own twisted way. He does love him. The match is reissued for later in the night, but this time inside a steel cage.
A steel cage match is just like a regular match, except there's a huge cage around the perimeter of the ring, but it doesn't have a roof, so the only three ways to win are by pin, submission, or escaping the cage. If you want to escape, you have to escape through the roof, as in most steel cage matches, the door is locked. This was likely done to prevent Rowan and Harper from getting involved this time. We finally have a clean finish to this match. Ironically, it's the new corporate stooge version of Kane that locks the door. He hasn't been the demon since the Wyatts kidnapped him, just like they did to Bryan. Although Bray and Bryan are a less refined team, they're still more experienced. The Usos pick up on this and attempt to escape rather than pinning or submitting them. In the final sequence, Bray and Bryan are right on the twins' tails, but one of them knocks Bryan down and falls in the precise worst way to drag Bray down along with him. Rowan and Harper attempt to prevent the Usos' feet from hitting the floor, but the height they jump from is too much for both of them. Bryan costs the family again, but this time, the numbers advantage are trapped on the outside. But again, Bryan rises to his feet. Bray approaches him. Some of the fans are still chanting yes, until Bray whispers something in his ear yet again. Bryan gives himself to Sister Abigail, and Bray prepares to hit it again, but then he escapes. And the crowd goes fucking mental. The stadium erupts into yes chants in Daniel's name as Bray tests him one last time. He sprawls himself out and challenges Bryan to hit him. When Bryan refuses, he calls him a coward and then attempts to squash him again, but Bryan swiftly moves out of the way and wails on him. Rowan and Harper are locked outside as Bray remains helpless. Bryan returns to his old repertoire before joining the family, and as it seems the crowd couldn't get any louder, Bryan sheds his Wyatt skin and the place goes electric. Bryan uses Bray's head to fight off the other Wyatts, and then in his first time since joining the family, he leads the people in a yes chant. The night ends with a wide shot of hundreds of Daniel Bryan fans in the crowd chanting with him, and Bryan literally and figuratively on top of the WWE. Bray lost the man he loves, but he did exactly what he said he would do. After this night, Daniel Bryan becomes unstoppable. But before that can happen, the next week, Bryan on top of the world with the people behind him challenges Bray Wyatt to a one-on-one match at the Royal Rumble because he knows Rowan and Harper will be occupied with the Royal Rumble match. Just like he did the weeks prior to joining the family, Bray appears on the screen again. A man that is not willing to die for something is not fit to live. Where I come from, being a traitor is a sin of the highest order. You do not expose me like you think, Bryan. You only exposed yourself. For only a coward would use his free wings to fly right back into the cage where he came from. Bray continues to call Bryan a traitor for listening to the call of the people instead of his own whispers. These sheep, they only look up to you, Bryan, because they chose to kneel. Traitor! What I want you to do now is I want you to go home, I want you to hug your mother, I want you to tell her you love her. I want you to tell her you're sorry, because everything that happens to you from here on out is your fault. In poetic imagery, the final words of Bray's sermon are drowned out by the crowd chanting loudly for Daniel Bryan. Later in the penultimate match of the night, Bray watches Harper and Rowan face off against the Usos again, but it's a jumping from Bryan that cost them. If the family keeps losing to tag teams like this, how can Bray Wyatt hope to beat Bryan? Maybe he doesn't have to beat him. He just has to make him a monster. The Royal Rumble event opens with Bray versus Bryan, so Harper and Rowan are open for support. Bray enters to sneers and boos as 15,000 people chant yes alongside Daniel Bryan. Bray keeps Bryan grounded while shouting at him that this is all his fault. Once Bryan is dumped to the outside, Harper and Rowan plan to get involved, but it's actually Bray who stops them, saying, "I don't need you to fight this war for me." He brings them in for a huddle and then sends them to the back. Bryan takes advantage of this by immediately firing up again. Just like in the cage match, now without the others, he is free to go wild. Bryan learned a lot about the Wyatts in his time in the family, as he uses every submission in his book on Bray, as Bray is not opposed to giving up, especially now that his sons and brothers are gone. Bray returns the favor by targeting Bryan's limbs individually. He places Bryan's head up next to the metal pole supporting the ring and squashes his skull as he screams at the fans for not helping him. Because from Bray's point of view, Bryan chose them over him, and now they're standing by as he gets bludgeoned. Bryan manages to get Bray caught in his signature yes lock, but Bray bites his hand to escape. He will do anything for his cause, because that's what believers do. Bray focuses on Bryan's damaged head even more as he uses the modified kiss to smash his skull into the barricade. What's more corrupting than brain damage? But it's not enough to make Bryan a monster quite yet, as Bray comes out on top, yet he seems a little disappointed. Like it wasn't the outcome he expected. But that's okay, as now they're done with Bryan, and they have new targets. It's believed the Wyatt family specifically went after Daniel Bryan because he is the audience favorite, and they wanted to prove that he was not a hero, he was a monster. And say what you will about Bray Wyatt, but after crossing his path, Daniel Bryan would become the hottest commodity in the company, would go on to get an army of fans to occupy Raw in one of the coolest wrestling moments of the era, which won him the opportunity to fight in the main event spot of WrestleMania, to which he went to and won the WWE Undisputed World Heavyweight Championship. Weird. Kind of like Bo Dallas. Oh. Daniel Bryan's rise to the top can be seen chronicled in the video package used to promote the match set to the song titled Monster. In the end, Bray Wyatt made Daniel Bryan the monster he needed to be. But he still wanted to make his point about the WWE's false idols. That's why later in the Royal Rumble event, the Wyatt family set their sights on the one and only John Cena, costing him his title match. Bray wanted to make a beeline for WWE's golden boy. He just got a little distracted. The Monday after the Royal Rumble event, during an Elimination Chamber qualifying match between Bryan, Cena, and Sheamus against The Shield, the Wyatt family spawn in to attack John, but in doing so actually end up costing The Shield the match. And they are not pleased with this one. You have to remember, at the time, these were the two biggest trios in the company, and while they had crossed paths previously, they always tried their best to stay out of each other's hair. Seeing these two teams in their prime at the height of their power, that would be a spectacle. But the question is, are they at peak performance? Because the next week includes Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns fighting over a stolen win as Seth Rollins does his best to mediate. But they are interrupted by Bray Wyatt and the family on the Titantron. I understand now more than you could possibly comprehend. I've got your blueprint stamped in my brain, and I know what you are. You're bonds. Bonds. You move forward, never backward. You spend all your useless days clawing with your aching hands forward just to that beautiful moment. That moment where you sacrifice yourself in the name of your king. Bray Wyatt isn't talking to the Shield as a whole. He's pointing at one of them specifically. Here's a little tidbit I know that you don't. Your moment is closer than you think. And I will build my empire next to the sea. And I will smile from my throne as I watch my enemies drown. And for the first time in WWE, instead of letting Bray speak for all of them, they need to work as a unit here. Harper and Rowan speak. They're showing the Shield that even though they may be a cult, they can still work better as a team. Even they are a better team. Bray calls them out personally again the week after building momentum back up and beating the Rhodes and Rey Mysterio. Many have played this game with me before, Shield, and they have all failed. You will be no different. You are but tiny little toy soldiers trying to play your part in a war that's not meant for you. You will fall. Right in time for my next game to begin. Follow the buzzards. Bray keeps mentioning a king and a game, but what does this mean? The Wyatt family puts them to the test later that same night, and when the Shield steps up, the family steps down. They have accepted the challenge and ignored his warnings. The next week, the family appear on the big screen again. You know, as our day of reckoning inches closer, I can't help but feel this childlike excitement building up in me. Clock is ticking. Your defeat, it will not come in vain. Bray continues to talk about the oncoming inevitable kingdom, like he can see the future. Luke Harper asked them if they are willing to die for this. They truly are going to war. Roman calls the family down to the ring and they oblige. They come face to face on opposite sides of the ring, but this time Bray crosses the battle lines. The Shield returns the favor and the family backs out again. They're saving the moment, giving them one last chance to abandon the fight. Regardless, the war is set as a match for the upcoming Elimination Chamber event. This video is one part Halloween special, one part telling the story of one of my favorite wrestlers, and one maybe getting some new people into wrestling by explaining the lore and universe rules. The Elimination Chamber match is a lot like the Royal Rumble event or a steel cage match.
6 people compete for a world championship, but only 2 start in the ring. Every couple minute intervals, a counter counts down to 0 and then releases a random contender from his or her pod. These 6 fight to be the last one standing as the match goes off of elimination rules, hence the name.
So 1 part Cell, 1 part Rumble, 1 part Survivor Series? How fun.
And more often than not, it's the final big event on the road to WWE's Super Bowl, WrestleMania, the granddaddy of them all, the pinnacle of wrestling spectacles.
But out of all the wrestling gimmicks I've explained here tonight, you've most likely heard of WrestleMania.
The final stop before the biggest event of the year, featuring The Shield versus the Wyatt family, where the crowd chants, "This is awesome," before the match even starts as the family finally crosses over to the Shield. They begin to head to their individual corners before the wild card Dean Ambrose jumps Bray Wyatt personally. We see a lot of matchups here like Harper versus Ambrose, Bray versus Rollins or Dean, or even the leader of the Wyatt family taking on the muscle of the Shield, Roman Reigns.
Spooky stuff.
And they truly do go to war. The Shield sends Bray over the barricade into the fans, and the brothers send Rollins through the Spanish announce table. After the destruction, the Wyatt family circles the lone Roman Reigns. Roman can't overpower the numbers game, but he does manage to overpower Bray and escape the kiss of death. In the middle of the ring, without any help from the others, Roman Reigns and Bray Wyatt fight face to face. But Bray manages to rally his troops and get the win off of Roman.
A lot was established here. You need an army to win a war, and leading up to this battle, the Shield have not been on the same page, mostly Roman and Ambrose. And Bray would not have done this without his family. He only beat Bryan when they surrounded the ring, and the same goes for Roman. And now that Bray Wyatt has shown strength in his battalion by taking advantage of the cracks in the Shield, he can continue his mission of taking down the false idols.
During the main event Elimination Chambers match, the final 3, the People's Champion Daniel Bryan, the Wrestling Superman John Cena, and the corporate face of the company Randy Orton. Cena catches Orton in a submission, but before he can submit, the lights go out, and the Wyatts appear in the chamber.
Remember, the Elimination Chamber, tons of steel, is designed to keep the competitors in and keep others out. This isn't a steel cage without a roof. This is a locked chamber. It's an insane feat of paranormality that the family managed to appear here.
Daniel Bryan, seeing a ghost of his past, rushes to take out Bray, but is caught by Luke Harper's boot. Bray is almost distracted by Daniel Bryan's rebellious nature, but returns his attention to Cena. Bray Wyatt plants John Cena in the name of Sister Abigail, and Randy Orton slithers into this opportunity and eliminates Cena.
Despite having no allegiance to the authority, the Wyatt family seems to keep indirectly assisting them.
Not like Kane, the corporate stooge, who the Wyatts taunt as he escorts them out of the building, because they remember, they're the ones that did this to him.
The message is clear, but let's hear more from them anyway.
The Monday after, John calls out the Wyatt family and claims that the fate of the WWE runs through him.
The world has an infection, and the virus is the human race. And through all these troubling times, John, it makes all the sense in the world that you paint yourself right in the middle. I mean, after all, what would the world be without its hero? What would the world be without its knight in shining armor here to save the day? You're hollow. You're full of empty promises. You promised to save these people. You promised to keep them safe. You tell them that everything will be all right just as long as you are around. Liar! You are a liar. You are a liar, John Cena.
Super Cena is unfazed. He challenges any of the Wyatts to step into his ring, and when they circle, he is fully prepared to take them on single-handedly. And why shouldn't he be? This is the man that took down the Nexus in the same way. But years have passed since then, and the numbers of the family do overpower him. Yet John continues to stand up and take beating after beating. He refuses to give up because that's one of the good boy virtues he stands for. He is wheeled to the back on a gurney. Next week, sure, Bray Wyatt has some more things to say, but more importantly, Dolph Ziggler teams up with Aaron Paul.
I forgot he was real.
Bray makes himself seen on the big screen again, talking to John.
Look at you, John. Standing out there all alone. You built this empire all around you. And can you feel the energy? Can you feel these people, John? You remind me of one of those champion thoroughbred horses. One that's been running for a long time. And he races. And he wins. And he wins. And the people, they just cheer for him. But one day, championship horse, he starts to slow down. And that's when reality starts to set in. Bray Wyatt does not intend to sacrifice John Cena. He intends to put him out of his misery. Mercy is calling you by name.
Bray Wyatt pulls on the strings of John Cena's fears. He is strong, but he is isolated. All of his friends have left him or have been left by the wayside. His last best friend was thrown off the stage in a wheelchair by a demon. The only tag title he's ever won was with the Nexus when he was forced to join.
John Cena stands alone in his castle. He has his fans, but for how long? How long until they abandon him as well? Bray Wyatt has his family.
Next week, Bray Wyatt greets the current Superman alone in his tower, John Cena, and the past Superman, Hulk Hogan.
Here they announced the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, which Cena wanted to throw his hat in the ring for before he was cut off by the family. I've always been fascinated with pride. It is my favorite sin. It has the power to blind even the strongest men, even those who claim to be immortal.
Hey.
Kids, take your vitamins and say your prayers. All praise be to the virtue of hustle, loyalty, and respect. As if they can do you any good.
Bray directs his words towards both Cena and Hogan.
You're both liars. And your foolish pride allows you to prey upon the weak and fill them up with all this hope. But hope is dead, as will be your legacy. John. Bray not only wants to prove that Cena is a false idol, but also corrupt John's legacy. He wants to retroactively change John's history, change the past, and maybe he just has to wait for John to slow down. No one's young forever.
John Cena sings Margaritaville? He does not care. This is a perfect time for this video to be coming out.
It's always fun and games with you, John. Until it's you who's caught in the spider's web. John Cena tends to embarrass and emasculate his opponents, and Bray is sick of it. He's experienced it before, under a different name.
And he's embarrassed again as Cena steals a win from Rowan, and then their moment is stolen by a part-timer legend.
That is not the last time that will happen to them.
So later in the night, the Wyatt family have some words. Bray compares John and Hulk, saying it's like a peek into the future. He asks John if he sees himself in Hogan. The only difference is John Cena never turned heel and joined a faction, just like Hogan did with the NWO. Bray accepts John's challenge for WrestleMania solely to prove that John is just like him, a creature sent for evil.
Your time is up. I am forever. It's only a matter of time for Bray, if time even moves for him like it does for us.
March 17th, 2014, John Cena agrees at WrestleMania he fights for his legacy. Bray toys with this idea by donning John Cena's colorful merch.
Children believe in superheroes, John. They wear masks and costumes because they want to believe that the world is good. They haven't lived long enough to understand that everything is a lie. We know very little about Bray Wyatt. We make inferences based on how hard he wants to prove that the world is evil, as it has been so unkind to him. But here, on this cold night in March, we get something.
My childhood, it wasn't all rainbows and butterflies. You dare talk about your scars, John? Well, I got a few scars too. The world gave me them. They gave them to me because it was my birthright to have them. They taught me that fire is hot and that blades are sharp. It taught me that everything I love in life, sooner or later, is going to wither away and die. But look at me now, John. I could be just like you. I could sign autographs and kiss babies and make sure that everyone buys all my merchandise. I could go home to my plastic girlfriend in my castle. I could take everything I fear and hide behind laughter. Tell jokes, make sure that I feel better about myself. But you were right about one thing. I am different than anyone you will ever face, because at WrestleMania, I don't care if I never leave. I don't care if I die, as long as the world sees you the way I do.
Bray claimed to be doing this for his family and for the people, to free the people, but now we know this pursuit is selfish. He blames John for not being the hero he needed, and he's been the butt of John's little jokes too many times. He made Bo a cheater, Bryan a monster, and he will show the world that John Cena is evil.
The next few weeks we get more sermons from Bray, but I believe we got everything we need to understand their match. Scooby-Doo accompanies Sin Cara to the ring.
This is real. They treat the costume like it's a real guy. Scooby-Doo is real in the wrestling universe.
During a match with Luke Harper, the Wyatt family change reality and crucify the false god with the sheep mask, a wolf in sheep's clothing. And the last Raw before WrestleMania, for the first time, Bray sings,
"He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole wide world in his hand,"
and makes an example out of R-Truth. Again.
Okay, now I actually mean it. WrestleMania 30.
Unlike the previous WrestleManias that featured more or less the same revolving cast, WrestleMania 30 is best known for being the first step towards the new era of WWE. Cesaro winning the Andre Battle Royal, The Shield coming together stronger than ever, Daniel Bryan winning the big gold, the end of The Undertaker's legendary 21-win WrestleMania streak, a dominant display that, quite truthfully, nobody thought could ever be broken. But it was broken by the Beast, Brock Lesnar.
All this was unthinkable a year prior, but WrestleMania 30 was the coronation of the stars that would be integral to the WWE over the next couple of years. What better time to have Bray Wyatt win big when it really mattered? But something you have to remember, it's not always about winning for Bray. Sometimes he has ulterior motives.
We get spectacle before the match, like Cena and Bray's video package, which is still one of my favorites, which you can watch on YouTube right now, set to Legacy by Eminem.
I remember coming back to this Mania after having not watched it for years, and then going to the song itself on YouTube, and a ton of comments were, "These fake and gay wrestling fans will never understand the depression Eminem had to go through to make this song. It's not for them." Which I thought was really silly.
The Wyatt family is played out in front of 75,000 people with a live music performance from Mark Crozer playing his theme song, following what r/Squared Circle calls a Louisiana voodoo ritual. They make their way to the ring, first flanked by the band donning plague masks. John makes his reserved entrance. What was meant to be a big match now feels more like a battle for oneself. And we see this before the match starts, as John stares daggers into the wall of Wyatt. Bray sits on the turnbuckle and whispers to his brothers. Again, we never truly know what he's saying.
But we have an idea. Because this is no normal wrestling match. This is a mission to make John Cena show his true colors.
The Nexus, the crowd, the devil's favorite demon, none of them could make John Cena embrace the hate. But maybe Bray Wyatt can. As the match begins, Bray drops to his knees and leaves himself open. He screams, "Finish me, John. Be the monster you are, John. Give them what they want." All while John tells Bray to get up and fight him like a man. John is thoroughly shaken as Bray beats on him in the corner and then laughs because Cena refuses to fight him. After the beating, he holds John up by his head and faces the camera along with thousands of fans. Is this your hero? When John finally stands up and fights the monsters off, Bray just laughs at him. Like clockwork, Rowan and Harper get up on the apron, but then Bray orders them to get back down. He wants John to make his decision uncompromised.
John Cena is the ultimate good guy, but in a match that features violence, he will go there.
But this is just a normal, clean singles match, and yet he's enraged and uses underhanded tactics like smushing Bray's face in the corner. The referee has to pull Cena off of Bray as he mounts and beats him.
The referee is surprisingly an integral character to this match.
When he finally gets momentum, he tries his 5-knuckle shuffle maneuver, but is caught as Bray pops his body up like a spider. And it's not like Daniel Bryan, where he can look to the crowd for help. Cena is in Wyatt country. As Bray conducts the crowd, they sway back and forth singing, "He's got the whole world in his hands." Bray has Cena scouted at every moment. He catches the top rope leg drop into a powerbomb. He DDTs him on the metal apron divider. And then when he finally has an opening on Bray, despite not getting involved at all yet, he chooses to jump on the family on the outside.
He chooses destruction and carnage over winning the match, which means Bray is getting what he wants.
If you remember, the first man they took out of the main roster and undeniably changed was Kane, as they sought to decapitate him with the steel steps. But this time, Bray leads Cena over to the stairs, and the mental weapon ends up in Cena's hands. Zooming in, we could see John Cena filled with rage. Rage we haven't seen from him in years, as he almost smashes Bray's head flat, but decides against it. This is not the way. This is not how he will do this. Cena again targets the family as he spears an unsuspecting Harper through the barricade. As Bray's face lights up, it's time for the final step. Bray Wyatt brings a steel chair into the ring and then slides it over to Cena. Fans paying attention should get flashes of Kofi Kingston. But will Cena do it Will he finally strike down this demon, but in doing so, go against everything he stood for? Never give up, always play clean, but this is not just a match. This is no mere man. He needs to be stopped. You have to stop him, John! The referee pleads with Cena, please, you're better than this. John Cena finally gets a look in his eye. He's done fighting himself. He needs to do what must be done. But in the same second, Eric Rowan appears on the apron, where Bray Wyatt told him precisely not to go. And John redirects his chair to Rowan.
Bray whispered something to them, but we don't know what. Even if Rowan did know what was happening and did know the plan, he couldn't bear to see this Neanderthal bludgeon the man he's devoted his life to. He lets his love blind him.
John Cena gets the win on Bray, and while he did it without embracing the hate, Bray Wyatt still proved that something dark resides in John Cena. It's only a matter of time.
Now I've talked about WrestleMania 30. The general consensus in the wrestling community is that this would have been the perfect time to put Bray over, but instead they buried him. 1, did you not watch the match? 2, this is a common thing with Bray Wyatt. Listen, I was there the years after. Everyone complained that Bray keeps losing and that the company is burying him, but I was always of the mind that wins and losses didn't really affect Bray. Like, even in NXT when he was the force of nature, he would cheat to win all the time. Bray Wyatt always has ulterior motives in his big money matches. He didn't come to WrestleMania 30 to pin John Cena. He came to corrupt John Cena. Of course, this will be muddled over the next couple events, and we'll get into that shortly. I just wanted to make my voice heard on this because the losses never really bothered me, and it makes his few and far wins seem that much more monumental.
The Raw after WrestleMania, a holiday for wrestling fans, mostly because the crowd is still hot, and this is the night we see new debuts and important changes. The last 2 Raws after Mania featured Brock Lesnar's return and Dolph Ziggler cashing in his Money in the Bank contract to get himself a World Championship match, which he won.
And because the Raw after Mania features a lot of hardcore fans who travel to WrestleMania, they tend to cheer for the wrong guys.
The raucous fans clap along with the Wyatt family's entrance and chant John Cena sucks to the tune of his theme. Harper, Rowan, and Bray face off against the man they attacked in NXT, Sheamus, the former NXT champion, Big E, and the face that runs the place, John Cena. And yet the crowd cheers insanely loud for the family and boos Cena out of the building when he throws his hand up for the 5-knuckle shuffle.
Probably why people were disappointed that he did not win. They clearly love this guy.
Wyatt crawls towards Big E as the fans chant, Wyatt's gonna kill you. Wyatt sacrifices Big E to Sister Abigail for the win as Cena looks beside himself, not because he didn't think he had it in him, but because the crowd has been turned, have been indoctrinated. Beating Wyatt at WrestleMania has only made him more popular and more powerful. The next week, he has words. People hang on every word as he begins his sermon with society.
There's more, but that's the Cliff Notes. Society as a whole has become this vile and putrid thing. You do as you're told, so says the man. You see what they want you to see, and you feel whatever it is they want you to feel. But I am different.
Bray continues to call Cena a liar and promises the children that he will save them from him. He has proven that something deep, dark resides in Cena as the fans continue to turn against him. So, he calls it out.
Abigail shall be my sword through this crusade, but I do not wish to slay this monster. Not yet. Right now, I just want it to come out and play.
Cena obliges, but he refuses to admit there's any monster within him, and then he cuts his jokes. He says the family are real party animals, insults their intelligence, and makes a fool of Sister Abigail by presenting a slideshow of Bray Wyatt's extended family.
If you needed any more examples of Cena not taking this seriously. Oh, John, you are hysterical. I love that anytime any serious threat gets in your face, all you know how to do is make jokes about it.
Cena agrees. So he gets serious. He lays down the info that Bray came to him and he lost when it really mattered. John has the advantage and he intends to return the favor and make Bray the desperate man.
I don't know, John. Seems pretty evil.
And then he calls Bray the eater of world's biggest Cinnabon. Bray is tired of the jokes and John is tired of the talk, so he challenges Bray to a match at the next big event, Extreme Rules, inside a steel
cage. The same steel cage that they lost to the Usos, the same steel cage that kept out the family, the same steel cage that allowed Daniel Bryan to escape.
Bray throws around us and we as he points to the crowd he calls his brothers and sisters in his backyard. He says we will no longer allow this fantasy to command us. Bray gets heated and starts to lose the crowd a little bit.
He leads the crowd in song, but John got the opening he needs. If he ever truly wants revenge, then he needs to make Bray lose his cool. The main difference between the 2010s wrestling product and the 2000s is how social it had become.
The main event of April 21st's episode of Raw would be decided on WWE's official iOS app.
So 2014 core.
Bray would give a sermon about how free will is an illusion and that inevitably they will all serve his will, which ends up being true as the people decide John must face all 3 members of the Wyatt family.
So aside from the story they're trying to tell here, Bray Wyatt is getting over huge.
The fans chant along with his entrance again. Bray assists in the beatdown early on, but through most of the match he avoids the ring. John is beaten down by the monstrous Harper and Rowan, but when Wyatt enters the match, he lights up and fights back. Before Cena can steal another win, which would have inevitably sent the family spiraling, Rowan and Harper get it thrown out.
Remember, it was Rowan's intervention that cost Bray his next victim.
But the beatdown continues as Bray lays John's head in his lap. He's handed a microphone by Harper and reiterates,
"In time, all things come to light. He's got the whole world in his hands."
The people sing along with Wyatt. Cena is helpless. Bray Wyatt ends the show singing, laughing, or maybe crying, mourning John Cena. Next week, John stands up in the middle of a steel cage as people shower him with booze, and all he's left to ask, why? Why did I deserve that last week? The crowd responds, of course, by chanting that he sucks. It's over. Bray has taken over. And Cena has lost.
I know I've been telling this story in canon as much as possible because I feel like the story is cooler that way, and a lot of wrestling content on the internet is, hey, we know it's not real. Check out these behind-the-scenes stories. It's not real. We know it's not real. And I get that those stories can be fun, and understanding how the product works was a big part of me becoming a much bigger fan, but it's not like any other medium does this. It's not like the guys who are making FNAF theories are constantly like, okay, I know this is a video game. Suspend your disbelief. Allow yourself to enjoy it. I'm only pulling back the curtain now because I think it's important to reiterate that the crowd is not and cannot be scripted. The story revolves around the reaction of the crowd. And that's what makes wrestling so beautiful as an art form. You can physically go there and be a part of the show. Some more annoying fans will take this idea too far, but the crowd is a character in the WWE, a living, breathing vessel. You and me are main characters in this ongoing tale of drama and violence. Wrestling is beautiful. Okay, now back to the sheep guys.
John lets the people know that no matter how much they hate him, he will continue to fight for them. Men, women, and children.
John is very popular with children. I still think he's got the world record for the most Make-A-Wish wishes granted.
Until the lights go out and we hear that familiar song.
He's got the whole world.
But this time, it sounds a little higher pitched. The lights come back up as a legion of children, all adorned in choir outfits, serenade John Cena with the song that's haunted him for weeks, until Bray Wyatt, flanked by the family, sing along with them and lead the children down to the ring. These aren't kidnapped children or anyone in danger. They're children of the Wyatt family. John Cena is taken aback as the army of children, now donning sheep masks of their own to obscure their faces, surround the barricade, separating Cena from the fans. It's not like they would be any help anyways, as the local audience joins in with Wyatt's demented song. John is surrounded. Bray Wyatt laughs maniacally as John is trapped in a cell of his own creation while holding a sheep-dawn child close to him. He has stolen the children of the earth from the grasp of the great John Cena. He changes the lyrics to "He has the C Nation in his hands. He has John Cena in his hands, and he has the big bad monster in his hands," chilling the commentary team to the bone. And then Hugh Jackman shows up later in the night and yells at a wrestler dressed like Magneto.
Wrestling is neat.
At Extreme Rules 2014, before the cage is locked with the two of them inside, Bray whispers to his men again, which allows them to prevent John from escaping at every opportunity.
But John, what happened to never give up?
He is surrounded in the lion's den as the people are heavily on Bray's side. They're singing for him. John tries to escape through the open top, so Bray mocks him by crawling backwards to the door pried open by the family. Cena returns the powerbomb receipt, and then in a test of strength, attempts to pry open the unlocked door, fighting against Rowan's strength. And he almost manages to beat him, but then Harper, followed by Rowan, add more weight to the pile.
Even Superman has a weakness.
Rowan leads Cena back into the cage like a dog leads sheep. Ironically. Cena drags Harper into the cage with him and is thwarted again by Rowan wielding a chair. The same chair Cena hit Rowan with at WrestleMania.
Poetic.
John Cena never gives up, but historically Bray has, as he places him in his signature submission, which he only manages to escape using the bottom rope to choke Cena out. After a hard-fought battle where Cena pulls Rowan into the ring by his beard, he concludes that he cannot pin this freak. So he attempts to escape through the open door, before he is confronted face-to-face with another lost child, as the child singing Bray's favorite song into a pitched microphone. Cena is shocked, either by the absurdity of it all or the fear he feels for what this child has been put through. The child looks scared while singing, until the family drags Cena's corpse back into the ring and Bray steps outside for the win. He holds the child's face, like the world, in his hands, and he smiles. The family leaves with the child as John Cena remains in the cage, in the ring, alone. Cena has lost the mental battle again.
Okay, so this is something in wrestling we like to call shenanigans. It's strange, sure, but a win is a win is a win.
And now that Bray has won, he has a victory speech prepared.
Abigail always told me that I was born to lead. She said, "One day, Bray, you will change the world." And I believed her. I always believed her. But this world we live in, this horrible world we live in, it has very, very wicked ways about it.
Wyatt goes on to explain that this world has been so unkind to him, how they treated him like trash, walked all over him, and tortured the innocent.
He says that last night John Cena's fear was personified as a singing child. But what does that mean? Is his fear children, or is his fear losing the main demographic that still believes in him, believes that there is good in him? You can't fool the children, John, for they are the foundation of what tomorrow shall bring. Their ears are so eager to hear, and their minds so eager to learn, and their innocent little eyes see right through you, John Cena.
Bray goes on to say that despite what John says, that Bray does not do this for his own selfish desires.
I do this for the children. I do this for the poor man that stands day and night begging on the side of the street, starving because they didn't think he was smart enough to live in this world. I do this for the teenage girl who wakes up crying every morning when she looks in the mirror because they didn't think she was beautiful enough to be the prom queen. I do this for each and every one of you.
John Cena stands alone, but Bray Wyatt stands with and for the weak and depressed and forgotten.
Whether those be easy targets for a cult leader or Bray legitimately fights for them because his human part has been every single one of them, that's up to you.
The main event of that same Raw features the Wyatt family versus The Shield. Again. The Shield has been fighting the classic stable Evolution under the skin of the Authority as they have rebelled against their leaders and decided to fight for each other once again.
Wow, they're such good and close friends.
It's interference by Evolution that gets the Wyatt family the win.
I think this match has more to do with the Shield story than it does the Wyatts, but I did say I would cover everything.
It seemed like the family was finally done with John and was ready to move on to their next big feud. For months, they had inadvertently assisted the Authority of Triple H and Randy Orton, and yet again, they just miss crossing them.
Imagine the biggest cult versus the biggest business conglomerate, but also pretend they're separate things. But it wasn't meant to be. Maybe.
Next week, they face off with Cena again, but this time he's teaming alongside Jimmy and Jey Uso, the current tag team champions. And it seems that their wars will continue as John Cena knocks off Eric Rowan for the win. The Wyatt family gets embarrassed again, and Bray has some words. He has an epiphany.
John, I wanted to say thank you. Thank you, John Cena, for helping me realize finally what I must do. Thank you, John. And follow the buzzards.
Later that same night, Bray asks Cena when their battles will end and calls the fans parasites for siding with John.
Last week you said you would never give up, even if it meant you would be the last man standing. Ooh, I like that. I like that very much, because at Payback, I'd really like to put your little theory to the test, because when mountains crumble, I was there. When oceans boil, there I will stand. And when everything burns down around you, John, I will be standing.
Bray wants to see once and for all how far John is willing to go to take him down. No rules, no disqualification, just a match where the objective is to keep your opponent down for the 10 count.
John Cena stands for a number of things. He fights for the children, he fights for the good of the world, and he fights to never give up. Bray has already torn down 2 of those pillars. Can he tear down a third? There are just some things in wrestling that never happen. Triple H never loses to the little guy until he did. Undertaker never loses at WrestleMania until he did. And John Cena never gives up.
The next week, they share attacks on each other, but what's important to note is this is the first appearance of Bray Wyatt's Fireflies. We've seen the crowd chant, sway, sing for Bray, but what came about when they visited London to compete is 17,000 held up their phone flashlights illuminating Bray Wyatt, buzzing around him as he spoke of the evils hidden in our world. Bray shows Cena just how far he's willing to go as he plants him with Sister Abigail's kiss on the stage, driving his head into the concrete. He sings Whole World in his hands as Luke Harper slowly counts to the number 10. The next week they go back home, but the Fireflies follow as Bray opens his segment singing his song again. The final show before the monthly big event Payback, he asks senior commentator Jerry the King Lawler to have a word with him in the ring. Of course Jerry refuses, but Bray sends the boys after him. Fellow commentators Bradshaw attempts to stand up for Jerry, but Harper and Rowan make quick work of him. "Now look what you've done, Jerry," as he sets up the chair in the middle of the ring. With a smile on his face, Bray gets his brothers to take Jerry to his seat, and he interrogates him on his part in the rise of Super Cena.
Do you feel guilty about this, Jerry? How do you feel remorse for destroying millions of lives, all in his corrupt name? How does it feel to be a liar, Jerry? And did you really think that you would just get away with all this?
Bray drops down to Jerry's level and apologizes for the necessary evil that must occur. Right then, Harper and Rowan hold Jerry back as they bring him to his feet. The remaining commentary team pleads with Bray to please not do this. This is a retired man. Bray looks away in the corner and then turns upside down. Cena's music hits. John Cena comes to Jerry's rescue, but Jerry warns John not to fall for it as Bray holds the microphone to his face. The numbers catch John and pry his eyes open as Bray holds Jerry in the corner with his boot.
Now, John, at Payback, I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to end you at Payback, John Cena. But right now, I want you to watch your friend fall. And I want you to understand that this is all your fault.
Before Bray can send Jerry to Sister Abigail, the Usos come out for the save and even the odds by freeing Jerry. John Cena grabs a mic and gets serious like he always said he would. Bray has crossed a line. At Payback, he will end Bray Wyatt and take away the power that has corrupted him further. That's not necessary evil. It's just plain evil.
Payback 2014, June 1st, last man standing.
It's worth noting that earlier in the show, a newly demoned Kane lays out Kofi Kingston before Bo Dallas enters the ring and tells the battered Kofi that all he has to do to get better is Bo leave.
Just a bunch of characters we've seen before that I thought you might like an update on.
The Wyatt family is led down to the ring with the Fireflies of Chicago. John Cena is joined in the ring by the Usos to even the odds. He's going to war. The match continues as normal until Bray knocks Cena down and stares down Jerry Lawler at the commentary booth while the ref counts. After trading finishers and managing to fight up, the tag teams take each other out and Bray smashes a steel chair over John's back. But when John Cena gets a hold of the chair, he doesn't think twice. He immediately swings at Bray. The time to be a good guy has passed. And it's not just the chair. Cena also uses the steel stairs he refused months ago to keep Bray down.
The commentary team uses this opportunity to say that John Cena is getting payback.
And I mean, you have to throw everything you have at your opponent in a last standing match, as Bray puts Cena through a table. And after going through the metal barricade, fighting in the crowd, getting thrown into the pyro, John Cena, in a form of poetic storytelling, literally buries Bray Wyatt under multiple production boxes.
It's over. The hero has won. John Cena pulls one out and everything is great and fine. This won't have horrifying ramifications later on. But overall, John Cena technically won this feud when Bray was at his strongest and really could have used that win to elevate his career, but yet again, he must rebuild. Bray Wyatt is relatable when he's winning, relatable when he's downtrodden, which makes him so dangerous with a microphone in his hands. He can convince anybody. Convinced me.
The Monday after, Bray can't even bear to show his face, so the brothers of the family will take up his cause for him, as they take their rage out on the Usos, who kept them out of the match at Payback. And Eric Rowan is the one to drop the iconic line, "Follow the buzzards." Harper and Rowan win the match after a long-fought battle as they walk up the ramp past an empty rocking chair.
It's like they don't know how to function without him anymore. Ironically, the night Bray decided to take a day off, the winds of change rushed through the WWE anyway.
As this Monday Night Raw, June 2nd, 2014, ends with the infamous moment of Seth Rollins driving a steel chair through his Shield brothers, joining the Authority, and making 3 individual future stars out of the shattered pieces of the Super Team.
Bray should have been ecstatic that he is now the owner of the sole super trio in WWE, unless you count the 3MB. But Bray will learn to hate this decision as he gets to know the 3 former members of the Shield more personally.
Next week, the new most hated man in the company, corporate Seth Rollins, stands alone in a suit and explains that he did not sell out, he bought in. He calls out other former members of the Shield, but before they can properly get their hands on him, Harper and Rowan appear.
I must reiterate that the Wyatt family is in no way associated with the Authority, right? He did say, "The devil made me do it" when he attacked Bryan. And ever since taking out Kofi, they've been targeting enemies of the Authority exclusively. Huh.
But they do explain this earlier in the night by saying that the Shield claiming they were the most dominant team was revisionist history. Bray finally decides to show his face publicly again after his embarrassing loss to help his brothers, but then John Cena appears again to fight Bray.
Oh my god, would you leave him alone?
The main event for that night is changed to a 3-on-3 with the Wyatt family facing off against John Cena, Dean Ambrose, and Roman Reigns.
The same people they've been fighting since February 2013. It is now June 2014.
But in the end, despite the Cena feud, it's the former muscle Roman Reigns who gets the win after spearing Luke Harper.
Well, it's not like that will be a problem later at all.
The same show. Sadly, Daniel Bryan has to relinquish his undisputed championship due to a career-threatening injury, and the rulers of the Authority paint him as a coward and not champion material. They schedule a ladder match at Money in the Bank for the vacant WWE World Heavyweight Championship, featuring the likes of Randy Orton, Cesaro, Alberto Del Rio, Sheamus, and Bray Wyatt, who, even though most of the roster stands on the stage during this announcement, even Harper and Rowan, he is not present. Alongside his championship match, Harper and Rowan have their own as they challenge the Usos for the WWE Tag Team Championships.
But this isn't NXT. What does the family seek to gain from these matches? You ain't got nothing in this world, man, if you ain't got power. Without power, we would all just be tiny little mice trapped in the jungle, running for our lives from tigers. Power can be so addicting. You need power. You crave power, and I just so happen to think that power will be the downfall of all mankind as we know it, man.
Bray Wyatt and the family have fallen out of favor and been embarrassed over and over. If they want the people to believe in their cause, they need power.
Speaking of NXT,
another competitor in the upcoming ladder match, the only man the family has crossed paths with previously, the final man they took out in their time in NXT, Sheamus, comes down to the ring and picks a fight.
Although it is canon, your average WWE viewer doesn't regularly watch NXT. So many stories started there don't really carry over, which makes it actually pretty cool that Sheamus remembers any of that.
But it's a tight battle as Bray cannot suffer another embarrassing loss, so Harper and Rowan try and use a ladder to fight Sheamus, but are then fought off themselves by the Usos.
I don't remember these two being so all-encompassing in the family story.
By the end of the night, Roman Reigns wins a spot in the ladder match by winning a battle royal, and John Cena wins a spot by putting Kane in an ambulance. Also, Kevin Hart is there.
I'm starting to think Bray will never get rid of this guy, but he did pick the fight.
All these championship matches end up doing is separating the family, as next week Harper and Rowan come to the ring for their match by themselves. And yet another loss for Harper and Rowan, attack the Usos and hold up the tag championships they intend to win. Bray appears on the big screen and tells them he's so proud of them. And this is when the vision is laid out.
Sure, the Usos had them got at every turn. Sure, John Cena got away from their clutches. Sure, they've been losing, but there is a world where after Money in the Bank, for the first time ever, every member of the Wyatt family holds gold above their heads.
And it's clear this is the future Bray wants to see. He believes this will make it all worth it. All the loss and all the bloodshed, all for this moment. It will bring them closer together. The main event of the Raw before Money in the Bank pits the 7 ladder competitors against each other in a tag match, with the villains taking on the heroes. And no offense to the family, but with these 3 new partners, Bray actually manages to get some hits over on Cena. Bray only manages to get his hands on 2 men in this tag match, John Cena and the new lone wolf, Roman Reigns.
Honestly, Bray does the smart thing by fading into the backgrounds of these matches. Days before a big match, you don't want to waste your energy on filler.
The show comes to an end as the Demon Kane attacks a handful of guys and then is added to the ladder match at the big event by the Authority.
Just so we're clear, the man they made violent is struggling on the main roster. The man they made give up his demon mantle is back as the demon. The man they made into a monster isn't even here anymore, and the man they tried to make embrace the hate is bullying them. The Wyatt family is in the trenches.
And it doesn't help that at Money in the Bank, Harper and Rowan lose their tag title match and Bray gets his shit pushed in. He doesn't just get destroyed by Kane or Sheamus or Cena or even Orton. He gets beaten and battered again by Roman Reigns. And in the end, Cena wins lol. Although earlier in the night, the Authority's new golden boy, Seth Rollins, wins the Money in the Bank briefcase with the help of the Demon Authority Kane.
I've already explained the Elimination Chamber, the Royal Rumble, Survivor Series, so I suppose the Money in the Bank briefcase is the final opportunity-based gimmick I need to explain.
Every year, a ladder match is held for the briefcase. Inside that briefcase is a contract that gives the holder a championship match of their choice that they can activate at any time. This used to mean a match could be planned ahead of time, but once wrestlers figured out they could cash it in at any time, even after the champions already had a match, the gloves were off. It doesn't have a perfect success rate, see John Cena, or Damian Sandow cashing in on John Cena, or Baron Corbin getting screwed out by John Cena. You know what? A lot of failures have to do with this guy. But it's fair to say whoever holds the briefcase, which you can hold for a year, but if you don't cash it in before the next Money in the Bank event, you will be stripped of it. Whoever holds it is likely to be the next world champion, and now the briefcase is in the pocket of the Authority, while Cena stands strong as the champion, and Bray Wyatt is there.
It doesn't take a wrestling expert to see that Bray was in a bad spot in the summer of 2014. He had lost over and over again. What he needs to get back on his feet is an old face that he's sure he can beat. That wasn't intentional. They never are.
At least the Monday after, the family gets their win back over the Usos and Sheamus,
proving that separately they are good, but together they are brilliant. Maybe if you wanted your lackeys to win the titles, you should have been out there to support them. They live for your approval, but I get Bray had to prepare mentally and physically for his own match.
But sometimes when you get knocked down, you have to start from scratch. Maybe that's why he targeted Sheamus so much. He is one of the guys he fought in NXT. And then completely unrelated, earlier in the night, multiple-time champion Chris Jericho returns to the WWE. After he attacks The Miz on his talk show, the Wyatts appear in front of him, welcoming him back. So much has changed since you've been gone.
Sheamus was the last WWE roster member they beat in NXT, but Jericho was their first major loss. But they've changed a lot over the last year. And Bray wants revenge. Not just for beating the Nexus or calling him fat, but for sending them down this vicious spiral, even though he had absolutely nothing to do with that. He was gone.
Just wanted to mention that they showed off the box art for WWE 2K15 game earlier in the show, and it shot surges through my body because I played the shit out of that game.
It's a legitimate reason I got back into wrestling, which is cool considering SmackDown vs. Raw was what got me into wrestling in the first place. Shout out New Legacy Inc.
The next Monday, the brothers beat the Usos all on their own, and Jericho has a match with The Miz, and of course The Miz loses.
It's kind of his thing, at least in this era.
But Jericho's celebration is short-lived as Bray appears on the stage with a microphone in hand.
We're waiting, Chris. We're all waiting for you to come save us.
Important context, before Chris Jericho returned in 2007, weeks ahead of time, vignettes would air of some kind of code asking for Jericho to save us.
What is the code? The code is... Who is the code? Is it Mick Foley? Mrs. Foley's baby boy? Who is it? Stone Cold is the code! Save us! Save us, Austin! Austin, save us! My God, it's The Rock! I can't believe it! Who is it? Who is Goldberg? No, it's... Who is Y2J?
And I was wondering to myself, Chris, how is it that you plan on saving an entire universe when you can't even save yourself? Now, do you think it will be your words that protect you from me? Because I believe that last week, in this very ring, I proved that actions speak much louder than words.
Jericho, like Bray, is strongest when holding a mic. It's not their wrestling ability that makes them the best, it's their individual gift of gab. But when Chris attempts to prove that his actions can speak just as loud, the other Wyatts appear and he backs down.
A good wrestler who's skilled on the mic, in many ways, is like the leader of a religion. You need to be bombastic and enthusiastic to get people behind your cause, even if your cause is you. And Bray Wyatt, for better or for worse, has run through the many faces of this company, but this is a new opportunity to fight a legend. But truly, what is a legend to a god?
Chris Jericho goes down a long list of all the things he's encountered in the WWE to prove that he's never faced anything like Bray Wyatt, which is not true. And then he says he will face Bray Wyatt for the first time at Battleground, which is also not true.
See what I mean when I say wrestlers tend to forget NXT?
But it might be intentional, as Bray Wyatt contends this by saying he remembers everything. Chris Jericho embarrassed Bray in NXT, and yet he doesn't even remember meeting him.
The day I graced your village was the most important day of your life. To me, it was Tuesday.
Come Tuesday?
Speaking of obscure references, Jericho tells Bray he's more willing to reach into that dark place than John Cena, and asks, "You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts."
I'm not going to, but just know if I did make a counter for every Joker line, it would be at 2.
Why so serious, man?
At Battleground, Harper and Rowan compete for the tag titles against the Usos in a 2 out of 3 falls match.
Self-explanatory, win a best of 3.
Harper and Rowan get the first win early on, but shortly after, the twins manage to squeak out a pin. In Roman's rage, he almost gets them disqualified, thus losing the 3rd round, and it takes Harper pushing him into the corner to get him to stop. When Bray isn't around, Harper needs to lead the sheep. But without Bray, they still can't squeak one out. Ironically, it's the Usos who use the numbers game to get the pin on Harper for the final win, retaining the tag titles again. But in Bray's match, they still follow him to the ring. Their allegiance to him is unwavering, but his to theirs? It needs work. And despite this being Jericho's big event return match, the Fireflies still follow Bray as well. Bray mocks Jericho's plan to save us, but these people may not want to be saved. They are enlightened. During Jericho's bombastic light show of an entrance, we see but glimpses of Bray's face. Disappointed. Enraged. When the lights come back up, we finally get a good look at an awful shiner on Bray's face. Jericho sees for the first time that Bray can be harmed like any mortal man.
Or maybe he just doesn't care about Bray Wyatt at all and just assumes this will be like every other match.
It's probably why he's caught off guard by the family getting involved, as if that isn't their whole thing. But he adjusts like any good legend and dives on them all on the outside. It's when the referee sends them to the back where the match starts to reach a fever pitch. Now Bray has to scramble to fight for his own honor. It seems that Jericho has Bray scouted at every moment, despite apparently having not faced him. He sure does understand his moveset thoroughly, like he's been studying it, yet he's still caught off guard by the spider crawl. Bray squashes Jericho in the corner, but doesn't even bother catching him in the dance. He uses this opportunity to stand over and scream at him. Bray does his best to avoid Jericho's submission, as he's got a bad history with them, but in doing so, he gets caught with a code breaker. Jericho pins him in the middle of the ring, beaten, injured, bruised, alone.
Bray Wyatt is there fighting day in and day out, and a glorified part-timer swoops in when he feels like it to knock him off the pedestal. He won't take that.
The feud continues as the Monday after, where Jericho is scheduled to host an episode of his highlight reel show, most famous for the screen exploding into Shawn Michaels' face. Jericho is attacked backstage by the family as Bray takes his place as host, using the opportunity to get some things off his chest. Like how he's always there for the people, but they weren't there for him. Without his brothers at ringside, they were all he had left, and they abandoned him for Chris? He did say this would happen years ago.
I know that y'all think that last night, because Chris Jericho had his arm raised at the end of the night, that you believe he is a better man than I. Do you really believe that I would burden myself with such petty, squeamish things? A loss in a battle means nothing to me, because I know that it is the war that counts.
This is far from over for Bray, even though he reads a quote that Sister Abigail always said to him, paraphrasing, "He who seeks revenge digs 2 graves," but he lets the lesson fly over his head because he believes he is forever.
Bray Wyatt is not in a fight to release a monster or show off deep darkness, but just for squabbling petty revenge. Chris Jericho may forget, but Bray never does.
And during this crusade, the next week, he interrupts Jericho's match with Mr. Money in the Bank Seth Rollins to attack and dispose of Chris.
It doesn't take a genius or even a writer to notice that when the family is together, they're powerful, and when Bray is alone, he struggles.
The match is set for SummerSlam, the same big event last year that Bray debuted at. Jericho has the opportunity to keep both Rowan and Harper away from that match. If he can beat them individually, then they will be barred from ringside. He manages to knock off Eric Rowan clean, but near the tail end of his match, before Harper can submit, Bray attacks Jericho, thus giving him a disqualification win.
The question is whether he lowered his chances due to being blinded by rage, or if he purposefully got Chris the win so he could prove he is just as much of a monster alone. Sure, it looks like Luke was gonna tap, but we'll never really know if he would or wouldn't.
Bray gets to address the fans who have been asking him why later in the night by himself.
Why? That is the question that has passed me my entire life. Why does a man do what he does? Why does a man say what he does? Why don't the sheep run from the hungry wolf? Why am I different?
Bray warns Chris that even though his brothers must stay behind, he is never alone in battle. Abigail will guide his unholy hands to do what must be done, yet he still does not heed her warning.
How can you save what is already damned? How can you forget what is already burned into your memory? What will be left of you, Chris?
He won't be digging a grave for both of them. He is forever. He does not require one. After months of attacks from behind and false finishes and one-way sermons, August 11th, 2014, Chris Jericho and Bray Wyatt will meet face-to-face to exchange words. But instead of in the ring or on a screen, they sit across from each other in office chairs in a small room. Bray attempts to throw Jericho off by telling him that he remembers him as a young boy when he haunted his dreams, but Chris still doesn't remember him.
Forget NXT, the specter that resides within Bray Wyatt right now is as old as the universe and haunts exclusively wrestlers and future wrestlers. That's crazy, right? See, I know it's about you, Chris, but you don't really know anything about me. So let me tell you about me. Let me tell you about how every time I tried to dream, when I close my eyes, all I hear is their screams. About my reoccurring nightmare that happens over and over and over again. But never once, Chris, did I claim to be a savior. Because I'm not.
Just blatant lies from Bray Wyatt, and even more from Jericho. Jericho also says he's never claimed to be a savior, lying like Bray. Maybe they aren't that different. Maybe it's why Bray wanted him in the family initially. But Chris spat in his face. Chris Jericho proves how alike they are by letting Bray know that he is a survivor, and the only way he survived this long is his adaptability. Jericho has changed his name and face so many times that there's no way of knowing which version of Jericho Bray will face at SummerSlam. Maybe he should try it sometime. Maybe Jericho does remember more of NXT Bray than he lets on. At SummerSlam, Bray pulls out every war tactic in his repertoire: barricades, steel steps, load-bearing rope pole. He does his best when he's scratching up from the bottom. It's only because of his taunting and gesturing that Jericho manages to escape Sister Abigail. Proven when a sweaty and desperate Bray Wyatt crawls and reaches to escape the walls of Jericho. Bray Wyatt does not submit. At every turn, Jericho has underestimated Wyatt and laughed in his face. It's only when Bray props up like a spider and crawls towards a cornered Chris, he stares into his eyes, and for the first time, he experiences that true fear. A nightmare. Bray Wyatt shows Chris Jericho what he is truly capable of when he becomes desperate. He sacrifices Jericho to Sister Abigail for the win, proving to Chris, and maybe even himself, that although he loves his family, he's been using them as a crutch, and he doesn't need them anymore. Bray kneeling over Jericho's body, the man who said that they were the same because they both used words as their primary source of power, surrounded by his fireflies, grabs a microphone.
Poor Chris Jericho. I guess, after all, he did find out what it means to follow the buzzards. He's got the whole world in his hands. And then Bray Wyatt kind of disappears. But remember the last time he went away? The landscape of the WWE drastically changed. well,
After that match at SummerSlam, the Beast Brock Lesnar demolished John Cena with his superior muscles and stole the Undisputed Championship, as the former Shield brothers all developed their individual styles.
except for Roman Reigns. For more info on that, see video I did not make.
Seth Rollins transformed into a spineless, conniving, corporate sellout favorite son yes man, and to combat that, former Shield brethren Dean Ambrose became the face of anti-establishment in WWE. He didn't look like the prototypical champion. He had a laissez-faire style of wrestling. He was unkempt. He was extreme. He was so fucking over. Which takes us to October, in a Hell in a Cell match at the Hell in a Cell big event.
Describing it as a steel cage with a roof would do a great disservice to the men that have shortened their careers waging war inside the demonic structure, but yeah, that's basically the gist of it.
Two former brothers, and depending on who you ask, lovers, waged war against each other as their emotions got the best of them and they legitimately tried to murder each other.
And again, yet again, despite having no allegiance to the Authority, Devil made him do it.
Before the lunatic fringe can crush Seth Rollins' head between two cinder blocks, the lights go out, and a familiar voice speaking in tongues echoes through the arena. When the lights come back on, Dean faces a lone lantern sitting in the middle of the ring, producing smoke. Dean is drawn in, perhaps seeing an apparition of his future or his fears, before Bray blindsides him through the smoke, crawls towards him like a spider, slams him down with one arm, and becomes transfixed on the smoky lantern. Seth Rollins can only look on in fear of the monster he may one day have to pass and take advantage of these shenanigans. Seth makes his way back with his personal security as Bray plants Dean in the name of Sister Abigail amidst a crowd of boos, and then the next night, the Authority doesn't even mention him.
So they didn't know this was gonna happen? Huh? Then what reason does Bray have to not only target Dean, but also make everyone hate him in doing so? Because he was always a bad guy, but even when he took on Daniel Bryan, the people cheered for him. He's just taken out the new favorite guy, the punk rock ripped jeans anti-establishment guy.
The next week, Bray appears in the middle of Ambrose's match with the Swiss cyborg Cesaro, sits at the top of the ramp respectfully watching his match, not even getting involved, and then when Dean wins his match, he just disappears, leaving his iconic rocking chair behind, still swinging.
It's almost like he's scouting Dean Ambrose out. But for what? And where's the other members of the Wyatt family?
Speaking of not understanding allegiances, this is the same night the Authority kicks Randy Orton out by having their new Golden Boy stomp his head into the same cinder blocks Dean attempted to use on him. And this changes his brain.
As if he already wasn't a psycho before this moment.
We have a rare important SmackDown of 2014 as Bray explains his reasoning with Dean. He doesn't want to hurt Dean, he wants to heal him. Like he healed Eric Rowan and like he healed Luke Harper. Hurt or heal. He wants to heal the broken Dean Ambrose. All he has to do is take his hand. Dean Ambrose finally going to get his hands on Bray Wyatt, the man who screwed him out of a win against his former brother. At the same time, WWE Chairman Mr. McMahon sets a traditional 5v5 Survivor Series match. It will be Team Authority made up of the corporation's strongest villains against a rabble-rousing team of John Cena's rebels. And if the Authority loses, they will lose power, and no one will be around to protect the prodigal son, Seth Rollins. On Raw, during a match between Party Boy Adam Rose and in-ring technician Tyson Kidd, Eric Rowan stumbles down to and around the ring by himself, looking confused, saying, "She's not here," past the camera, and then leaves.
We haven't seen any of these guys for months, and since Bray has returned, he's been acting alone. His sheep are lost.
Also, since we're covering religious gimmicks, we see a vignette of former NXT superstar Xavier Woods singing with a robe-adorned choir as the text, "A new day is coming soon," appears on screen. I wonder what that means.
Andrew, why are we talking about so many other things going on Raw? Fine. Bray reiterates his words in a smoky room. Sin, sin, sin. But you ought to be forgiven. But this is another lie that they teach you. Dean Ambrose, there's no going back for you. Self-destruct all you want, but I know what your future is because I know the only way is my way.
Again, he gives Dean the choice.
You have a choice, Dean. You will walk with me and enjoy your path of righteousness. We will walk away and you will burn for it.
Meanwhile, John Cena has formed his rebellion for Survivor Series, made up of himself, The Big Show, Dolph Ziggler, and the big guy, Ryback.
I think I've mentioned all of them except for the Big Show prior, but you get the Big Show, right? He's big.
All the while, the Authority are still trying to form their own team. Originally, Ryback was meant to be a part of their army. They send out feelers for anyone on the active WWE roster who's a proper team player. And Monday Night Raw ends with Dolph Ziggler's incapacitated body flopping down at the feet of Triple H and Stephanie McMahon as the camera pans up to reveal Luke Harper, who says, "I'm a team player."
Okay, so apparently the family just went their separate ways off screen. Unless they have other motives we don't know about.
Next week, we get the official lineup of Team Authority. Mr. Money in the Bank, Seth Rollins, the World's Strongest Man, Mark Henry, the Russian monster, Rusev.
Hey, that's the guy Bray worked together with in that one NXT Battle Royal.
So, the Demon Kane and the Swamp Monster, Luke Harper, who proves his loyalty by beating the one-man army Dolph Ziggler for his Intercontinental Championship. My favorite championship.
Well, that's a story for another day.
Grumpy Cat is on Raw. So West African legend and former Bray Wyatt victim Kofi Kingston joins Xavier Woods in the New Day vignettes, dropping his fake accent.
Raw really is a special show.
But still, Bray attacks Dean Ambrose with the same production box John Cena buried him under, while also saying they want to put us in a box. It's not subtle, but he's not trying to be. He wants to reach Dean. The Monday before Survivor Series, Bray takes a page out of Chris Jericho's book by trying to prove that the two of them aren't so different.
I pray he does not mistake my generosity for something malignant. Nah, it is true that at first I had to get his attention, man, by any means necessary. But I am promising you, Dean, from the bottom of my heart, right here, right now, I come in peace, man. I want you to see the salvation that I can offer. It's all real, Dean. It's all real, and it's all my passion, Dean. I want you to feel it. I want you to feel how I can save you, Dean. I pray that you understand our souls are intertwined.
And there it is. The reason he reached out to Dean Ambrose only after the Shield split, and only targeted him after months of the family drifting apart. He believes they are both alone in this world, but Dean doesn't see it that way. He's thriving on his own. It seems Bray took the wrong lesson from his match with Jericho, that he won by himself. Bray Wyatt is laid out by Dean Ambrose during his sermon. He has to think, does he really need anyone else? The divide is aggravated even more as Team Cena gets their final competitor in Eric Rowan. Luke Harper, in the pocket of the Authority, stands face to face with his former brother and can't even muster words. Just a shocked expression. At Survivor Series, we will not only see Bray try and show Dean Ambrose that they are one and the same, alone in the universe, we will also get brother against brother. Hey look, former NXT champion Big E is in the New Day vignettes with Kofi and Xavier now. So Survivor Series.
What was it that Chris Jericho said to Bray? I'm not a savior, I'm a survivor. He was right the first time he fought him in NXT. When Bray loses to him, he will learn a valuable lesson.
But when the bell rings, Dean rushes at Bray. Even though he's jumped him multiple times, he finally, legally gets to get his hands on him. Bray manages to get the upper hand, but when he turns his back, either in pride or to test Dean, Ambrose catches him. Bray stomps the hero's hand on the stairs and then poses to the audience to absorb their hatred.
Embrace the hate, if you will. In wrestling, there are a lot of different types of matches. Some are technical, some are hardcore, some are methodical. I say this with the utmost respect, okay? This is not an insult. This match is two dudes slamming into each other at high speeds, and it rocks.
Slamming into each other and tossing each other around, just no regard for their own well-being. Dean wants to hurt Bray, and Bray wants to heal Dean in his own messed up way. Bray continues the hurt by slamming Dean's back on the steel stairs with a tear in his eye. And then in the middle of the match, while the match is still going, an exhausted Bray grabs the microphone and speaks to the bruised Dean in the ring.
Why are you doing this, man? It didn't have to be like this, Dean. Me and you, we could have ruled the world together, man. There's nothing anyone back there can do to touch us, Dean. Me and you, we're special, Dean. You see that. I'm sorry, man. But you chose your path.
And then he strikes Dean. He did everything in his power to show Dean the way. He begged him to go away with him, fall away together in the void, in the universe for men like them. But Dean turned him down, and Bray gets his heart broken again. He just wanted to heal. He slides a steel chair over to Dean and kneels just like he did for John Cena, but Dean does not refuse the call. He strikes Bray with a chair and gets disqualified. Ambrose doesn't care. He shows no remorse. He just wants to hurt Bray. He continues beating and beating on him. He sends Bray through a table and then buries him in more chairs. He tosses them from outside the ring onto Bray. He was always a lunatic, but Bray just gave him that last little push off the deep end. He's made another monster. Another monster he cannot control. Dean Ambrose uses tables, ladders, and chairs. Okay, I see where they're going with this. I don't want to talk about the 5v5 match too much because it's legitimately a fantastic match and you should watch it. It's legit on YouTube. You can watch it right now. Dolph Ziggler gives an all-star performance, clutching a 3-1 discrepancy in a career-making performance. Big Show turns heel for the millionth time. Sting shows up to cost the Authority.
Remember the crow guy from earlier in the video?
But I'm just here to talk about the family. Harper has always been more partial to helping the devil, and Rowan is just very suggestible. Former enemy John Cena tags in Eric Rowan to face with Luke Harper to the eruption of the crowd, but then Seth Rollins tags Harper to prevent this face-off. Whichever way you look, both former family members are siding with past enemies. Harper and Rollins actually seem quite close. They're working together well, and they're the final two left for Team Authority later on. Ironically, looking back at the Wyatt family versus the Shield matchup, Eric Rowan was always pinned against Seth Rollins, and maybe that's why he tries to eliminate him himself here. He also has to deal with the corporate Kane he, in a way, helped to create. Meanwhile, Harper has his own personal rival in Dolph Ziggler, the man he stole his Intercontinental title from, and makes a beeline for him on the outside. Finally, after 15 or so minutes, Eric Rowan and Luke Harper both get hot tags, cross the ring to each other, and beat the dog shit out of each other. The two brothers of the Wyatt family finally get their hands on each other, and while the fans love it, you can't help but feel a little sad. It really is over. Corporate Luke Harper assists new best friend Seth Rollins in eliminating former family member Eric Rowan. And then former champion Dolph Ziggler gets his revenge by pinning Luke Harper.
Either way, by the end of the night, shenanigans aside, not only is the Authority out of power and Seth Rollins is exposed, but the family is splintered and Bray just wants a family. But he won't find it in Ambrose.
Because of the vacuum of power, the next night on Raw, the returning Daniel Bryan is made the impromptu GM of Raw and makes an Intercontinental Championship match between Luke Harper and Dean Ambrose.
And maybe this could be a new opening for Dean Ambrose to continue down a new path with a new opponent, but he makes a fatal error.
After getting bumped into the referee by Harper, the match is thrown out. So Dean takes this as an opportunity to get extreme. He buries Harper in chairs just like he did Bray. He goes for a ladder and table like he did as well, but it's when he smacks Harper's head into a steel chair with his finisher, the Dirty Deeds, Bray has to act. Bray Wyatt attacks Dean Ambrose from behind and then extends his arms to the people while blocking them out. And Harper doesn't interact with him at all.
Something happened with the family that scattered them like this, and maybe Bray attacked Dean for revenge? Or maybe he wanted to save corporate Luke Harper from a terrible fate that he was met with? Luke Harper has lost his way, but Bray found him once. He can heal him again.
Later that same night, after Big Show is showered with "You Sold Out" chants, Eric Rowan comes down to confront him. Big Show uses this opportunity to verbally assault the man a few words, but Eric does manage to take off the sheep mask that used to lead him, speak for himself, and muster up, "I don't like bullies."
This could come from a number of things. I like to think the newly liberated Eric Rowan is taking out his frustrations from every time Luke Harper smacked him around before the split. Or maybe he was brainwashed so hard he reverted to a child. Or he was brought into the family as a child. We actually don't know a whole lot about Eric Rowan. Hence the mask.
Next week, Rowan takes what he's learned and fights the Big Show over the steel stairs, but unlike Cena, Show does not hesitate.
He's trying to apply what he's learned, just incorrectly.
This is a really weird episode. Seth Green appears to be hosting a show soon, and they mention Robot Chicken on the show. I know it's a popular show that exists, but it gave me whiplash. Also, commentator Michael Cole describes a fight between Rowan and Show as a melee, and then immediately a brawl.
What is that, a hint? I thought this wasn't canon.
The splintered, powerless members of the Authority, Kane and Rollins, receive the help of corporate Luke Harper to fight.
for their main event match. He loses to a roll-up from Dolph Ziggler, but still, after the match, Big Show finally shows his true colors as he rushes down to the ring to support fellow big boy and former tag partner Kane. But then Rowan runs down after him with the stairs because he's got the mind of a toddler, which crashes into Harper along the way. Harper and Rowan have crossed paths a lot since they split, but Bray has almost been ignoring them, or vice versa. After an era of The Shield, The Family, and the 3MB, the fresh trio on the scene, The New Day, debuts to spread the power of positivity, and although they look to be having a lot of fun, the fans don't really respond to it. Back in the day, Bray Wyatt would beat up Yoshitatsu to get back on his feet, but it seems like R-Truth is the new fall guy. After handily beating Truth, he sets up tons of props in the ring with his rocking chair, and gives a sermon about ladders.
Welcome to Ladder!
Let me tell you a little story about a man named Jacob. Jacob used to have these dreams, these visions. He had these dreams of this great ladder. This is a very special ladder, you see. The angels adorned the ladder because it led straight to heaven. Bray Wyatt continues telling the story of Jacob's ladder from Genesis. I too dream of this great ladder, but my dreams, they're a little different. In my dreams, I ascend this ladder to praise no one, and I look down at this world and I foolishly laugh at all the vile creatures that he has created. All these simple-minded insects like Dean Ambrose. Bray does not see salvation in his dreams. He sees carnage and violence and weapons. Dean has thoroughly had enough of the chicanery as he runs down to the ring to use these weapons on Bray, and Bray only barely escapes. Bray has lost before, but for maybe the first time in his career, he experiences fear. The expression on Bray's face as Dean Ambrose tears apart the set and smashes the almost sacred rocking chair that has followed Bray up to this point. If it wasn't bad enough, Bray truly has lost everything now. But remember the lesson he learned by beating Chris Jericho. A man with nothing to lose, a desperate man, is dangerous. And the next Raw and SmackDowns before TLC proves this. I will never forget the first time I saw her. She was sitting in that rocking chair underneath the cypress tree. That was her chair. Production shows the murder scene on the big screen, which is honestly a pretty big dick move. Dean Ambrose has destroyed a piece of me that night. He took something that did not belong to him. He took something from me that I could never replace. So I decided that perhaps I should take something from him. We see footage from SmackDown of Bray Wyatt attempting to break Dean Ambrose's neck. But then Dean shows up in the back of an ambulance with a bunch of weapons and then removes his neck brace so that he can fight Bray. If it wasn't clear already, I love wrestling. Bray Wyatt has lost the last remaining remnant of Sister Abigail other than her compound, and on top of that, he barely escapes with his life. Dean Ambrose promises to make Bray leave TLC in the same ambulance he appeared from. Well, Bray's having a pretty bad night, but at least the family. Eric Rowan and Luke Harper have their first legal one-on-one match, and it gets thrown out because Luke Harper sends a ladder through his head. Okay, well, that was bad, but Eric Rowan attempts to attack Big Show again, but is cut off by Luke Harper trying to protect his new authority brethren as they continue to fight. The family has never been more splintered. But at least we have TLC. Tables, ladders, and chairs. I feel like I need to say that every time. Dolph Ziggler and Luke Harper go to war in a ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship, where the one-man army Human Slingshot wins his beloved white belt back. And because this year is tables, ladders, chairs, and stairs, a stairs match between Rowan and Big Show happens. That doesn't even make sense. Then it wouldn't be TLC, it would be TLCS. That doesn't mean anything. Which makes way for the main event of the evening. Bray Wyatt with nothing to lose versus Dean Ambrose beyond the point of no return. From the jump, they brawl around the arena, from the crowd to the round table. Dean Ambrose takes a page from Bray's book by baiting him with a steel chair and then dual-wielding kendo sticks to break him open. But Bray returns the favor by sending Dean eye first into the business end of a kendo stick and urges Dean to cry for him. Halfway through, the momentum shifts as Bray takes control of his more violent side, wielding the staff. He puts the kendo stick through Dean's jaw and forces him to bite down. This is not the same
same Bray that wanted to heal Ambrose. This is a vindictive bastard who wants to hurt him. Ambrose continues to put his body on the line, jumping off of ladder after ladder to put Bray through table after table, and even gets revenge by attempting to squash Bray's trachea with the same move Bray used to send him to the hospital.
Bray has told a lot of tales, Jacob's Ladder, the Fallen Angel, but there is one last famous angelic tale he never mentioned.
Dean has every opportunity to end the match and move on, but he just keeps going. He needs more carnage. The match cannot end yet. He has more hurt to gift. Dean Ambrose brings the production monitor into the ring to keep going on his ambulance promise, but it's upon pulling the wires that the monitor explodes in his face, blinding him. And then Bray, just like Seth Rollins at the start of their story, takes advantage and pins Dean Ambrose after gifting his body to Sister Abigail in retribution for her beloved rocking chair.
In a way, he flew too close to the sun. Hubris. Dean Ambrose has now lost 2 major matches because he refused to end them before he could cause more bodily harm. He has his own motives besides winning. I guess they're more similar than they both think. And this would have been the perfect ending to their feud. How soon we forget.
How could I forget the annual WWE Tribute to the Troops show? I love the American military. Apparently, Dean Ambrose and Bray Wyatt fought in a boot camp match where Ambrose won by smacking Bray with a steel-toed boot provided by Sergeant Slaughter, and then sent Bray and himself through a table.
If they don't mention it on TV, it's not canon. I just thought it was funny that they did this again. They do it legitimately every year.
And then they ran it back again on that year's Christmas episode of Raw in a Miracle on 34th Street fight match. Just like all their other weapons-based battles, except with Christmas trees instead of ladders and candy canes instead of kendo sticks. They do unfortunately mention the boot camp match during this episode, making it canon, but Bray wins the Christmas gimmick, so they basically cancel out. As fitting of an end as TLC would have been, or maybe I'm biased because Bray won by any means, an ambulance match between the two is set for the first Raw of 2015, the 5th. Which, to be fair, does make sense considering how often the ambulance came into play into their story.
Takes us to a place where life both begins and ends. Everything in life must come full circle eventually, and you and I, Dean, we have reached the point of no return. This is where our great journey ends.
The rules of an ambulance match are a lot like a last man standing match or a buried alive match. You must incapacitate your opponent to the point where they can be driven away by an ambulance. At that same Raw where the match was announced, a returning to combat triumphant Daniel Bryan announced that he will be entering into the 2015 Royal Rumble match to win an opportunity for the Undisputed Championship that he never officially lost.
So basically by that point, any wrestler people wanted to win the Rumble prior was immediately replaced with the most beloved guy. Everyone wanted him to win, and it was basically a sure thing. The story writes itself.
But in the end, it's all the same. Dean crushes Bray's throat with another gurney and then tosses himself off the top of the ambulance to look cool. But it's one rogue hit from Sister Abigail that curses Dean to the back of the ambulance, fulfilling his promise.
He's a man of his word. Now we can move on to something not new, but renewed.
January 19th, 2015 marks Daniel Bryan's in-ring return against Bray Wyatt.
Bray Wyatt always brings out the best in Bryan. This was a great choice for a return match, but the story here is that the corporate Kane is trying to prevent Daniel Bryan from making it to the Rumble, and we get word that Bray Wyatt is also going to be in the 2015 Rumble, so it's in his best interest to keep Bryan out as well. But
Bray gets the win after corporate Kane interferes, and he looks sad. Not disappointed in his fallen monster, and not upset that he has to side with the man who tried to burn him, but sad. Daniel Bryan gets beaten alone in the ring, and this is maybe, just maybe, the moment Bray Wyatt realizes that he has truly lost everyone. Which means he needs to fight for himself.
He needs to battle with demons. He needs to win the Rumble. He needs to fight God herself, or the closest thing in spooky wrestling terms that they have. And I am so excited. Royal Rumble matches tend to be my favorite just because of the constant onslaught of reveals, returns, and how many storylines starts at the Rumble. The Rumble matches were always the ones I would show my non-wrestling fan friends to try and get them into it. And while I did explain what a Rumble is before, now I can show you, or at least the Bray parts of it.
The 2015 Royal Rumble match starts off with the former reality show and fake movie star, The Miz, opening the match with former tag partner R-Truth.
First wrestling event I ever went to. I sat all the way in the back, and I made a sign that said, "Awesome truth, you guys suck," and then they broke up right after. I like to think I had something to do with it.
After going back and forth, number 3 was the returning Bubba Ray Dudley.
You see, this year's Rumble was in Philadelphia, which was the home of the edgy wrestling promotion ECW, and ECW has a very dedicated fan base. Bubba Ray was an ECW original. You may be asking what this has to do with the Wyatt story, but if you are, you clearly don't know this story well enough.
But Bubba comes face to face with number 4, Luke Harper, and then entrant number 5, Bray Wyatt. But surprisingly, Bray and Harper worked together to beat up and eliminate Bubba Ray Dudley. The former leader and former follower come face to face. We haven't seen them boil over yet, but Bray has already set his new plan into motion. They eventually decide if they're going to fight, they're gonna do it at the end, after they've gotten rid of everyone else. After months, we finally get to see one big happy family again. But then, number 6, Curtis Axel. Eagle-eyed viewers will notice that this is the former Michael McGillicuddy. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. But he doesn't even make it into the match as he is attacked from behind by Eric Rowan. Eric immediately confronts Harper, but then the two brothers turn their gaze towards their former leader, Bray Wyatt. And we may finally see these two fight against their master, but when Eric pushes past Harper, he changes his mind, or maybe he was never going to help him. Harper and Bray team up against the 5th entrant, Rowan, who isn't actually in the match, but while Harper is dealing with him, Bray takes the opportunity to eliminate Harper.
Not betrayal if you betrayed him first.
The next couple entrants must go through Bray Wyatt, who runs the ring and points to the WrestleMania sign. Next entrant, the Boogeyman.
I mentioned him earlier, but the Boogeyman was more creepy spooky than menacing spooky, but he scared me as a kid, so it tracks. He used to stuff worms in his mouth.
Making this, as commentary puts it, the Eater of Worlds versus the Eater of Worms.
Bray Wyatt started his main roster crusade by targeting what he deemed a fake demon. Now, he's taking out every other so-called paranormal entity.
Bray Wyatt spider crawls towards a Boogeyman who's foaming at the mouth. He quickly eliminates him, but he's still served his purpose of helping Bray to his new path. Sin Cara, number 8, gets caught, Sister Abigail, over the top rope. That's 4 eliminations for Bray. He's running this Rumble just like Punk did that one year. He does a lot of things like Punk did, but Punk was giving sermons between entrants. So Bray grabs a mic.
Open invitation. Everyone in the back, I hope you got the message. This is Bray Wyatt's year. He's got the whole world.
The crowd sings with him in preparation for a huge moment, but that invitation is answered by Zack Ryder. Clearly not the man Bray wanted. And surprisingly, Ryder holds his own for a while. He even gets his offense in, but it's in getting close to eliminate Bray that Bray turns it around and eliminates him. The crowd is incredibly behind Bray.
Will no one answer the buzzard's call?
The next countdown ends. Entrant number 10, Daniel Bryan. The people are no longer behind Bray.
Bray was at his height when he was trying to cut Cena down because he was just putting to words what the crowd was thinking at the time. But against Bryan or Dean, he's not used to being hated.
But in this Rumble, years later, he wants to play the bad guy. But he can't land a hit on Bryan as he's full of energy and flies through the air off the momentum of the people. The singing of the crowd is now fully replaced with yes chants. But that might just be a crowd who likes to chant and sing because they sing Fandango's old theme when he enters next.
You may not know this, but Fandango's theme went viral in 2012, 2013, completely separated from Dango. Sometimes all you need is just a good entrance.
Number 12, Tyson Kidd. He had a technical wrestling classic with Daniel Bryan, and Bray attempts to catch his breath. Tyson Kidd and Daniel Bryan slam into each other at high speeds. Now everyone is down for number 13, which is Stardust.
This guy's going nowhere.
Stardust does get some good hits off of Bray Wyatt, and this would be a good moment since Cody Rhodes was Husky Harris' NXT coach, if Stardust was Cody Rhodes. Bryan sends Tyson over the top rope, and then Bray through the middle, and dives at him through that same rope.
Reminder, you only get eliminated if you go over the top rope.
Bray gives Bryan a flashback by slamming his head into the steel stairs as number 14 DDP comes on down. Stardust fights him too. This would be a really cool moment between Cody and the man who was with him ever since he was a little boy. If Stardust was Cody Rhodes.
Which he isn't.
Number 15, the halfway point, Rusev. And Rusev, a lot like Bray earlier, ruins a feel-good moment by eliminating both DDP and Fandango. Now this is a beef man who has no issue with being the bad guy. Then Rusev turns his gaze to an exhausted Bray lying in the corner. Bray pulls himself up and they come face to face to argue, but before it can boil over, they're caught by a flying Bryan. you have made 2 enemies.
The Royal Rumble has multiple stories going on at multiple times, but the ones I want to focus on are Bray getting accustomed to being hated and every person in this arena wanting Bryan to win.
Rusev and Bray worked together, just like they did in that NXT Battle Royal years ago, but they worked together to eliminate Daniel Bryan, and all the air gets sucked out of the room.
Again, this was the man who was off the show for nearly a year with an injury that stripped him of the championship he never actually lost, entering the Rumble match, which he's never won, getting eliminated halfway through.
Everyone in the arena chants no, and then Goldust comes out next with his screen visual reading Shattered Dreams. The way the screen is right behind a deflated Bryan. Cinema.
But yeah, everyone was pissed.
They immediately turn on this match and boo the whole thing. Doesn't matter who's in the ring. Stardust and Goldust have a betrayal back and forth, which will ultimately lead to WWE accidentally creating their biggest competitor. Whoops. No matter what they do in the ring, it's drowned out by chants for Daniel Bryan or loud boos. The next entrant is New Day member Kofi Kingston. Kofi has a history of managing to escape eliminations in Royal Rumble matches in new and exciting ways each year. It's a fun gimmick. Speaking of history, Bray is the one that tries to eliminate Kofi multiple times. But it's entrant number 18, Party Boy Adam Rose's Rosebuds that catch Kofi and get him back in the ring before his feet can hit the floor. And then they drop Adam. Kofi just got a huge pop and got the crowd moving for the first time in minutes, but what is now a common occurrence in this match, Rusev is there to shatter dreams.
This has been talked about to death in so many videos, mostly in the eye patch one I keep referencing, and it is my goal here to tell the story in canon, but it became evidently clear why they eliminated Bryan that early.
Entrant number 19, the big dog, Roman Reigns, and at the same time, the people realize, oh fuck, Roman's gonna win the Rumble.
And if this happened last year at the Rumble or even later at Money in the Bank, it probably would have been fine. Roman was still very green, but people thought he was cool. But replacing Daniel Bryan as the guy, you're gonna need to go through hell.
Roman single-handedly eliminates the Dust Brothers before they can finish the story. In the ring stands just Roman, Rusev, and Bray, so naturally Ruru and Bray team up on the big dog. But entrant number 20, Big E, evens the odds and targets Rusev, leaving Bray and Roman to face off.
Facing off one-on-one for the first time since they were both in dominant trios. Bray spent the previous year fighting Dean.
Damien Mizdow, the Miz's stunt double, has a big moment of getting his spot in the Rumble to a rare pop from the post-Bryan crowd, but yet again, the moment is ruined by Big Bad Rusev. But Bray can't get involved with more villainy. He has a dog to put down. Number 22, Jack Swagger tries to eliminate Rusev, but Bray prevents him.
And this isn't circumstantial. Let's put our differences aside for now. Saving Rusev did not help Bray win in any way. It actually makes his job a lot harder later. Let's chalk it up to sentimentality.
Despite deciding he's at his best alone, he still holds Jack's arms back as Rusev wails on him. And then the next entrant, big guy Ryback, pounces on Rusev until Bray pulls him off.
He's loyal to a fault.
Number 24, Kane. Number 25, Dean Ambrose. Dean jumps at Kane, but Bray makes a beeline for the man he sent away in an ambulance, yet again accidentally assisting Kane by fighting his past rival.
What I just did was equate Dean Ambrose to Daniel Bryan, and that was no accident, because now that Daniel Bryan is officially out of this match, Dean becomes the crowd's #1 priority.
Dean has become the most beloved man in this match, and despite shattering dreams, Roman has become the most hated. But the brothers-in-arms still work together, Dean fighting Rusev, and Roman not letting Bray out of his sights. He knows what he's capable of. And then they immediately eliminate next entrant number 26, Titus O'Neil. This isn't super important, but 27 is Wade Barrett, who has the Intercontinental Championship, which I have no clue how he got, but he does target Ryback, making a soft Nexus reunion with Skip Sheffield. But not Husky Harris. Bray continues to target Roman. It's unclear who decided to go after who, but we know the two pseudo-leaders, when they went to war, know each other inside and out. The ring is starting to fill out, with number 28 being Cesaro, the man who won the Andre Battle Royal at Mania last year. He's made a career out of throwing people over the top rope. Rusev drop kicks New Day's Big E out, slides through the bottom rope himself. Number 29 is The Big Show, joining his big authority brother Kane, and then number 30 is hero Dolph Ziggler, who manages to eliminate new champ Barrett, gets swung by Cesaro, and then eliminates him as well.
Making our finalists Kane, Big Show, Rusev, Roman, Dean, Bray, and Dolph. It didn't necessarily have to be Dean. It wasn't going to be Kane or Big Show, just as long as it was not Roman Reigns. And then one by one, slowly and anticlimactically, Kane and Big Show unceremoniously eliminate Dolph Ziggler, and then Bray Wyatt, and then Dean Ambrose. This sucks, man. And since Bray just got eliminated, this would be the moment I would stop talking about the match. But everything I've mentioned in this video thus far beyond the year 2011, I actually watched in full for the first time for this video. From like late 2012 to early 2015, just like animation or any other kid thing I thought was kiddie, I had stopped watching wrestling. I thought I was growing up. I thought I was done with it. And I probably would not have gotten back into it if not for very strong feelings. I've told this story before and I will tell it again, but one night in January 2015, nothing else was on, so I switched over to the USA Network to see what was going on the wrestling show I used to watch, just to check in, you know? But due to an extreme blizzard along the East Coast, the episode of Monday Night Raw they had planned was canceled. But because they've never missed a day since starting in the early 90s, they've held an impromptu episode from their headquarters in Connecticut. And because this was last minute, they just showed off the championship match and the Rumble match from the event for free. And I watched in the background while gaming or being on my phone probably, and kept getting more and more into it. And I remember how much I loved the Rumble. I believe that as long as wrestling can make you feel strong emotions, for better or for worse, it can keep you interested and invested. It was love that got me really into it in 2011, my love of CM Punk, but in 2015 to like 2019, it was hate. The Rumble match ends with Reigns eliminating both the Authority's goons. The bell rings even though Rusev is still in the match, but then Roman eliminates Rusev with the help of real-life cousin and international superstar The Rock. Roman Reigns wins the Royal Rumble and is then showered with a chorus of boos that even confuse The Rock. It's The Rock. He hasn't been booed in nearly 2 decades. A 14-year-old Andrew Ultra saw this Royal Rumble and the crowd response on a cold winter night in January, and he thought, who the hell is this guy? And the rest is history. Now I'm here. But my wrestling path is a story for another time. Right now, my sights, like Roman, are set on Bray Wyatt. But Roman is in the title picture for Mania now. Where does that leave Bray? Which leads us to the next big event, Fastlane 2015. Midway through the big event, the lights go out and an army of druids wielding lit torches surround the stage, but these aren't a stable of other spooky wrestlers. These always follow one specifically. And then when we hear that dong, we know that's gotta be The Undertaker. We're on the road to WrestleMania, which is synonymous with The Undertaker, who's competed at 22 prior to this. Undertaker made his first appearance at WrestleMania 7 in 1991 and had been fighting ever since, but the last time we saw him at WrestleMania 30, he lost to the Beast and current world champion Brock Lesnar. And we hadn't seen him since. Like, Undertaker disappeared most years before returning, leading up to Mania, but he lost in a shocking display last year. What does he have left? People legitimately believed this would be The Undertaker's final match. We'd see him go out on his shield. And maybe it should have been, but The Undertaker rarely makes his own matches. People just tend to call him out prior to Mania to box with God. Maybe if a lesser man did it, he wouldn't have responded. But the Druids lead a shiny new casket down to the ring and then open it up. Everyone expects the dead man to pop out, but instead, it's Bray. When looking back, I always remember Roman being my catalyst for getting invested, but I also remember seeing this and thinking it was the coolest thing ever. It was so over with me. An actual passing of the torch, where I remembered liking The Undertaker as a kid. He was the coolest, but seeing this new guy in a fresh, new, spooky manner, I was an instant fan. Also, maybe the boogeyman. There is a wicked feeling in the air tonight. Can you feel it? You know, I will never forget the first time that I saw him. He made me tremble. His eyes were cold, man, and behind them, there was nothing but darkness. I feared him, but now he has become just like everyone else, weak and broken, just a shell of what he once was. His obsession with sympathy has turned a monster into a mere mortal, and now his soul is lost, stuck in limbo between your world and ours. Bray's mission is clear. He used to look up
to The Undertaker when he reveals that they are one in the same, coming from the same place. He wants to return him to his former glory. He wants to resurrect the dead man so he can grace him himself. He isn't the dead man anymore. He's just a man. Bray Wyatt has faced off with all the mortal men he wanted to. Now, after he was conquered at last year's WrestleMania, he wants to summon The Undertaker.
At WrestleMania, I will claim the soul of The Undertaker. It's like a horror movie sequel where an edgy teen tries to reanimate like Freddy or Jason or whatever. He doesn't care about what effect this will have on the world. He just wants his soul. The new face of fear. Maybe Taker's story was supposed to end with his iconic streak, but Bray continues to try and summon him.
The Monday after Fastlane, we see Bray Wyatt backstage with red roses next to a casket, but not talking to the camera, talking to the casket.
I wonder what you think about when you close your eyes. Do you see what I see? Do you feel what I feel? Perhaps it's just a constant reminder of a paradise lost that runs through your mind. Or maybe it's a number. 21 and 1.
No.
If our entire existence is truly defined by a moment, then that moment signaled the end of yours. So sad. The mighty Undertaker reduced to a pile of broken bones and broken dreams on the grandest stage of them all.
Bray Wyatt continues to describe the beast claws getting deeper and deeper into the dead man and how that makes Taker afraid. He doesn't understand that Taker is gone. He thinks he's hiding from him. At WrestleMania, he's going to finish the beast job.
He made Bryan a monster, Dean a lunatic, but these aren't the words of a fan who wants to return the Phenom to his former glory, but a creature of the night who wants to take his spot.
The next week, Bray physically comes down to the stage and says that wicked feeling still resides in this building. What is left of The Undertaker? Is he a spirit haunting objects of the past? Bray brings out a wooden casket and a gas canister.
I've always had this fascination with the natural instincts of fire. Fire has no prejudice. It has no feelings. Fire just has this urge to destroy anything and everything that is in its path.
Bray will learn to regret those words.
I would walk through the fires of hell just to see your face, Undertaker. I don't think you really know who it is you're dealing with, man. You can't hide from me. No one can hide from me. Where I come from, everything burns.
Bray continues to bait the dead man, taking inspiration from his past opponents by destroying an artifact of his past with fire while exclaiming, "Find me."
Not fight me or follow the buzzards. He says, find me. He thinks Taker is missing, but will return for Bray. He has to. He is the new face of fear, and he's going to prove it.
Another week passes. No Undertaker. Bray won't take this as an answer. He speaks again. Undertaker's been appearing in his dreams, apparently, so he must be communicating with him. Bray followed the buzzards as they circled around a shell of a man.
Pride has always been my favorite sin, for it was pride that cast me down to this rotten world to walk amongst you, and it was pride that led me straight to you. And understand, Undertaker, I will not worship you.
Bray refuses to be the Undertaker's redemption story, despite handling this one-sided feud. Bray is the new face of fear because last year, Undertaker experienced fear for the first time. The crime is that Taker allowed himself to have something to lose while Bray is left with nothing. He calls WrestleMania his final resting place, but the challenge is not accepted. He does not show his face. Bray directs his attention over to the golden urn. The same urn that has followed Undertaker since the beginning of his career, that allowed Paul Bearer to control him and inevitably became his final resting place.
All your power locked inside a jar. Can this urn bring back the dead?
Whatever power comes from this urn was enough to control the force of nature that is The Undertaker, but Bray Wyatt, stupid, simple, prideful Bray Wyatt, believes he can handle it. Bray opens up the urn, and there is nothing. Bray laughs.
Surprise, surprise, everyone. It's empty. It is empty and shallow and hollow, just like...
Bray turns to the urn as smoke begins to pour out of it. Crackling lightning surges through the walls, and then the gong hits, and the lights go out. A spotlight shines in the middle of the ring, revealing Bray Wyatt's broken rocking chair, now fully restored and repaired. Now Wyatt experiences fear as he asks to the shadows, "What are you doing? What have you done?" The final gong hits as a ransom letter appears on the Titantron. At WrestleMania, the man comes around. Lightning strikes the rocking chair and it is engulfed in flame. Life, rebirth, and death.
Now Taker knows Wyatt. His brother Kane tried to burn him years ago when he first came to Raw, but couldn't get the job done. But the fire keeps burning. They clearly know something about Bray we don't. The fallen angel.
Bray is overcome with emotions. At first he laughs, and then he's moved to tears. Undertaker is torturing that which he holds dear. But this only proves Bray has nothing to lose. But neither does Taker. Bray finds comfort basking in the warmth of the fire. The match is on.
I should reiterate, when I saw this, this was the coolest thing I had ever seen. This was the match I was getting WrestleMania for.
And while it's already set, Bray has some more words for what the dead man did. The Raw after the horrifying events.
Her memory is such a treasure. I remember the first time I ever saw Abigail sitting in that chair. She was so beautiful. And not just her appearance, but in the things she said to me and the way she spoke. She told me about all the lies of this rotten world had been feeding me my entire life. She told me about people like you.
Bray gives the sermon in front of a different ruby red urn. And while it is unclear whether the urn holds the ashes of the chair or of Abigail herself, to Bray it doesn't really matter.
And I think the story is way more interesting when we never see Abigail or figure out if she's real. Really, that's why Bray works so well as a character. Even if you don't want to suspend your disbelief and believe that a fallen angel, a form of demon, possessed the body of Husky Harris after he hit rock bottom and was raised from scratch by a sister that may or may not be real, you can at least believe that that's what Bray believes. I think it's just more fun to believe. Also, we see more physical manifestations in this story.
The next week, the go-home show, the final Monday Night Raw before WrestleMania 31, Bray Wyatt taunts The Undertaker.
Why, oh why do people hide from the truth? Is it because you're afraid? Is it because you're embarrassed to show the world who you truly are? But I understand, man. I do. Reality can be very, very difficult pill to swallow. But that does not change the fact that each and every single one of you are guilty. You're guilty, because the truth is that somewhere in there, deep down, you hate the person you have become.
Bray Wyatt, not the monster, but the man, may be projecting and taking it out on Undertaker. He even calls out people who cover their faces and calls them liars, even though he did the same back in NXT when he was displeased with what he saw in the mirror. This Bray Wyatt has crushed dreams, attacked people, and resurrected a dead man in the pursuit of ego. But you can't help but feel a little bad for him.
He tries to hide the fact that he's lost, and he tries to deny the fact that he wants so desperately that he wants his soul to be set free. But don't you worry, Undertaker, because luckily the angel with the burnt wings has been sent to take you back to the other side.
Bray Wyatt the Vessel and Bray Wyatt the Soul are at war. As Bray gets louder and louder and more intense, the lightning brightens the room as Bray controls what used to be reserved for The Undertaker. The insecurities have left, the projection is over. The Soul has taken control again, and he is going to put The Undertaker to rest and take his place as the new face of fear.
Bray Wyatt's second WrestleMania match, and he only battles his biggest targets, icons, legends, immortals.
Undertaker has been a lot of different things. He's been a zombie, a biker, a cult leader of his own. But the spectacle around the most recent iteration of Taker, where he only shows his face for big events, makes him this form of like a goth cowboy, which is why in the reality era, he's most synonymous with Johnny Cash. The hype package and entrance used for WrestleMania 27 featured Ain't No Grave because he just returned from being buried alive by Kane and the Nexus. So for his second return after the new face of fear disturbed his rest and awoke him from his slumber, this year's video package was set to When the Man Comes Around.
These WrestleMania hype promos are some of the best works to come out of the WWE, and I highly recommend them, mostly Taker's and Bray Wyatt. Wyatt's.
But the second part of it that focuses on Bray sounds more like a breakup song. Seeing someone you lost in your dreams, Bray Wyatt wants to see the legend. To do so, he summoned the soul of a man who should have stayed buried, and his entrance follows this idea as he gives life, animates scarecrows. And then Bray stands in the ring on his side, unsure of what's about to happen. Remember, we haven't seen The Undertaker since last year's WrestleMania. He hasn't shown up on Raw or SmackDown leading up to this. There's a chance he may not even show up at all. But then that gong hits, The Undertaker shows his face, and the place loses it. Undertaker finally comes face to face to confront Bray Wyatt, who backs away and holds onto the ropes, maybe out of fear or maybe out of shock. He did this. He summoned the dead man, and now he must suffer the consequences. He barks, "You can't take this from me, and all of this is mine now," at him, not realizing that the people have turned on him yet again. He takes off in a risky sprint towards him and gets caught in a big boot. That thoughtless move was unlike Bray, but tracks with a man who fears what he may have done. Undertaker dominates with his classic moveset early on. He even busts out the old school, which in this potential passing of the torch has more than one meaning. But Bray manages to catch Undertaker while doing his big moves. He's clearly been studying him, and you would have to be this invested in bringing him back. But unlike his mental brawls and street fights, he tries to pin Taker off of nothing, just to win the match fast. After managing to get the big man down with his knowledge of his moveset, a groggy Undertaker crawls towards Bray in the corner, and the terrified boy has an epiphany. He drags Taker's body to the outside and squashes him on the stairs. Undertaker catches Bray in his Hell's Gate submission, and a terrified Bray, fearing he may not survive this, beats the fuck out of the Undertaker to escape. Bray lifts the mighty demon off the ground with one arm and then hits his running senton.
The running senton is a move he used in most of his matches. I just haven't brought it up because it hasn't really been important to the story. I'm only bringing it up now because I really like the move and I want to mention it.
In any other scenario, this would be the end of the match as Bray Wyatt prepares to hit the Sister Abigail, but he forgets he's in the ring with the dead man, who rises out of it and catches Bray with a chokeslam. And then after his finishing maneuver, the Tombstone Piledriver, Bray barely kicks out. Taker is shaken by this. Bray Wyatt just kicked out of the move that has taken dozens out of commission. He glides his thumb along his neck, signaling his intentions, but Bray manages to land a surprise Sister Abigail.
The reason this is so unexpected, more so than the other surprise finishers, is that normally sacrificing to Sister Abigail is a process. It requires a sort of gravitas and respect.
But Bray desperately busts this one out. Undertaker manages to just kick out anyway, and now they're both in utter disbelief.
There are a number of ways to get a match thrown out. If two competitors are outside the ring for a 10 count, they get counted out and it's a no contest. Similarly, if both competitors are out on the mat inside the ring and cannot get up to the 10, it's over.
Both men are down as the count begins. 1, 2, 3, bodies strewn throughout the ring after a war. 4, 5. Bray Wyatt pops up like a spider spinning on his head, showing to Undertaker that he is no mere mortal, and Undertaker returns the message. Wyatt experiences true fear. His cockiness did not allow himself to prepare properly. His hubris will be his downfall. He is not ready. He tries one last-ditch effort, mocking the Undertaker's sign of death, and grabs the Phenom's lifeless body to dance with Sister Abigail. But the dead man reverses it into a Tombstone Piledriver for the win. Bray Wyatt awoke a force of nature because he wanted to feel a fraction of his power. He tested him, but for the WWE, Pandora's box has been opened, and it cannot be closed. Yet.